Chapter 2570. Fire Lotus walked to Qin Feiyang's side and whispered, "She's determined to make things difficult for you." "I know." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Didn't he imprison the mermaid princess and the others for the 10 divine artifacts?" However, he dared not agree. To put it nicely, the sunset bow and the other divine artifacts followed him. To put it bluntly, they were helping him out of kindness for the sake of the land of origin. He had no way to command the 10 divine artifacts. Besides, he himself was reluctant to give the 10 divine artifacts to the Dragon Slayer Palace. Thinking back, he had spent so much effort to persuade the 10 divine artifacts to stay. How could he give them to someone like Supreme Cloud? "Then what should we do?" Fire Lotus asked secretly. "I don't know either." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Qin Batian sighed. "I think we should just forget about it." "Forget about it." Qin Rishuang immediately looked at Qin Batian with dissatisfaction. What was her father thinking? How could he just forget about such a serious matter? Qin Batian said, "Actually, we believe in Supreme Cloud. After all, we're in the same boat." "That's right. Although Supreme Cloud is selfish and wants Feiyang to hand over the 10 divine artifacts, in the end, it's for the good of the Dragon Slayer Palace." Lu Xingyang nodded as well. "So be it then," Qin Batian said, and turned off the image crystal. In the hall, the group of people looked at each other. Wasn't this too much of a joke? Tantaili sighed. "Perhaps this is the best solution." "Mother." Qin Rishuang looked at Tantaili unhappily. "This is obviously a problem Supreme Cloud deliberately set up. What if it's really not Supreme Cloud? Then, not only will Feiyang have to kneel and apologize, but he will also have to hand over the 10 divine artifacts. When has Feiyang ever kneeled to others? We can't let him suffer this grievance." Tantaili said, "I'm not afraid of being wronged, but I'm afraid of the sunset divine bow and the others, because I don't have the right to order them around." Qin Feiyang shook his head, feeling aggrieved. He really wanted to vent. Wang. At this moment, Qin Rishuang's image crystal rang again. Qin Rishuang looked at the image crystal suspiciously. As it recovered, 2 shadows appeared. "Father? Uncle Lu." Qin Rishuang was stunned. The two were none other than Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang. Qin Batian glanced at the crowd, then focused on Qin Feiyang. "Supreme Cloud has left. There are some things that we would like to discuss with all of you in private. Please speak," Qin Feiyang said. Qin Batian laughed and said, "Is there a fire in your heart that you have nowhere to vent?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "This is reality. Actually, we also know that this was most likely done by Supreme Cloud. But what can we do? First of all, the dragon-slaying palace cannot do without the support of the treasure school. Because over the years, the resources of the dragon-slaying palace have basically been provided by the treasure school. Secondly, Supreme Cloud and Supreme Beast have always been on good terms. If we attack Supreme Cloud, Supreme Beast will definitely not sit back and watch. At that time, the dragon-slaying palace will definitely face a situation of collapse. The most important thing is, Supreme Cloud and Supreme Beast are very powerful. Even if Supreme Dragon finds out that they were the 2 Supreme Emperors of the dragon-slaying palace, Supreme Dragon will not accept them. As long as they sincerely submit to the dragons, Supreme Dragon will definitely accept them. At that time, the situation of the dragon-slaying palace will be even worse. We may even face destruction." Qin Batian shook his head, his face full of helplessness. Qin Feiyang asked, "So you have been holding back? Otherwise?" Qin Batian asked. Qin Feiyang was silent. "Feiyang, this is a dispute between forces. No matter where it is, no power can avoid these disputes. As the leaders of the dragon-slaying palace, we must consider the overall situation. After all, we are not like you. We are not willful, nor do we have the capital to act recklessly," Lu Xingyang said. Qin Feiyang sighed and nodded. "All right, let's put this matter aside for now." "No need to put it aside." Lu Xingyang shook his head. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Xingyang in surprise. "We are us and you are you. Don't worry about us. Do what you have to do. Your ancestors and I know that you are determined to enter the hell of the Nether King. It's useless for us to stop you. As far as we know, Supreme Cloud and Supreme Beast will also enter the Hell of the Nether King. At that time, no one will care what you do in the Hell of the Nether King. You can do whatever you want. Lu Jingyang said with a smile. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile. So the two of you are also scheming. Brat, how can you say that? What are we scheming? Qin Batian and Lu Jingyang glared at Qin Feiyang. No. As long as I understand. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. All right then. Be careful. Qin Batian warned. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Don't worry. I will not let anything happen to great-grandmother. You are getting more and more improper. Qin Batian rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyang, and then looked at Tantai Li. As an elder, sometimes you should discipline him. Don't be too indulgent. Tantai Li shook her head and laughed. All right then, take care. After Qin Batian finished speaking, he decisively switched off the image crystal, without the slightest hesitation. Zhao Tailai retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang, asking suspiciously, Young lord, what do the two of them mean? You still don't understand? They mean to let Supreme Beast and Supreme Cloud stay in the Hell of the Nether King forever. Qin Feiyang said. This? Zhao Tailai was dumbfounded. How is it? The means of these two ancestors are quite terrifying. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. But is there a difference? Zhao Tailai was doubtful. Of course there is a difference. Our ancestors' biggest concern is the resources provided by the treasure pavilion. If Supreme Cloud and Supreme Beast die outside, the people of the treasure pavilion will definitely hate us. Let's talk about it later. Killing those two will not be an easy task. But it's different in the Hell of the Nether King. Supreme Cloud won't be able to control the treasure pavilion in the Hell of the Nether King. If my guess is right, after we enter the Hell of the Nether King, the two ancestors will definitely start planning to take over the treasure pavilion. In other words, they want all the resources of the treasure pavilion in their own hands. In this way, even if Supreme Cloud comes back alive from the Hell of the Nether King, her position as the chief pavilion master of the treasure pavilion will only be in name. And as long as they get all the resources of the treasure pavilion, our ancestors won't care if Supreme Cloud goes to the dragons. Qin Feiyang said. Zhao Tailai smiled. Hearing you say that, they are indeed quite powerful. You must be joking. If father wasn't powerful, how could he have achieved what he has today? Qin Rishuang said proudly. Yes. Zhao Tailai nodded repeatedly. But I still hope to control Supreme Cloud and Supreme Beast. After all, as our ancestors said, they are not weak and are the main fighting force against the dragons. Qin Feiyang said. Tantai Li smiled. Didn't your two ancestors say that as long as we enter the Hell of the Nether King, you can do whatever you want? Let's wait and see. Try your best to control them if you can, and kill them if you can't. Qin Feiyang said. Huai asked. But will Supreme Beast enter the Hell of the Nether King? Yes. Supreme Beast's body and soul have been destroyed, and he only has a strand of consciousness left. I'm afraid he won't dare to take the risk. The five-clawed golden dragon said. That depends on how much he hates me. If he really hates me, he will go in. Even if he doesn't go in, as long as he can get rid of Supreme Cloud, it's still not bad. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Everyone nodded. Qin Feiyang sighed and looked at everyone. All right then, you guys go ahead and cultivate. I'll return to the Dragon God Palace first. Wait. Let's refine the Yin-Yang Chaos Pill and Supreme Nirvana Pill first. The Blood Kirin hurriedly said. So anxious? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Of course. The Blood Kirin nodded. All right then, after refining these pills, I'll return to the Dragon God Palace. Qin Feiyang smiled and turned to look at Huolian. He said, help me prepare the medicinal ingredients. At the same time, the Dragon God Palace. Where's Li Buer? Is he not back yet? In the valley. Yi Zhong looked at Qin Feiyang's cave residence angrily. No. Next to him. Yi Shuer shook her head. Yi Zhong said angrily. What the hell is this bastard doing? What's wrong? Yi Shuer looked at Yi Zhong suspiciously. You don't know, but Qin Feiyang has his eyes on him now. So no matter what, we can't let him sneak into the Hell of the Nether King. Yi Zhong said in a deep voice. Yi Shuer was stunned and wondered. Why would Qin Feiyang have his eyes on him? Nonsense. This kid is causing trouble every day. How can he not be targeted by Qin Feiyang? Yi Zhong's face was full of anger. Yi Shuai covered her mouth and laughed. This is a good thing. At least it proves that Li Buer is indeed a talent. A good thing. Yi Zhong looked at Yi Shuai speechlessly and said, also your great-grandfather and second grandfather can't stay at home and the Dragon God Palace. Yi Shuai was stunned and frowned. Don't tell me that Qin Feiyang has his eyes on us too? What else? This Qin Feiyang knows our family's situation like the back of his hand. He even knows about Li Buer giving us tea leaves. Yi Zhong said. So powerful? Yi Shuai was shocked. So this old man has decided to send you to Divine Dragon Island later. Divine Dragon Island is the safest place now. This old man has already discussed with Revered Dragon, and he has agreed. In short, before this old man comes back from the hell of the Nether King, you guys stay on Divine Dragon Island. Yi Zhong said in a deep voice. Divine Dragon Island? Yi Shuai was stunned for a moment, then her eyes were full of curiosity. She was not unfamiliar with this place. She often heard her grandfather talk about it, but she had not been there until now. Yi Zhong pondered for a moment and said, go home now and bring your great-grandfather here. Okay. Yi Shuai nodded, and then opened a teleportation altar that led to the entrance square. Let me go back with you, I'm a little worried. Yi Zhong thought for a moment and stepped on the altar. Chapter 2571. When Yi Zhong brought Yi Shuai back home, he explained the situation to the old man and asked Yi Shuai to clean up. Yi Zhong took out the image crystal and contacted Yi Cheng. In the castle, on the second floor, in a cultivation room, Yi Cheng took out the image crystal suspiciously. Big brother. Looking at Yi Zhong's shadow, Yi Cheng was a little stunned. At this time, shouldn't Big Brother be preparing to open the Nether King's hell? Why did he still send him a message? Yi Zhong said, go home immediately, I'll wait for you at home. Go home. Yi Cheng was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, why do I have to go home? I'll send you to Divine Dragon Island later. Do you know where Li Buer is? Yi Zhong asked. Wait, why do you suddenly want to send us to Divine Dragon Island? Yi Cheng quickly reached out to stop Yi Zhong and asked suspiciously. Yi Zhong briefly explained the situation. When Yi Cheng heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He didn't expect that Qin Feiyang's words would make Big Brother so anxious. He wanted to tell Yi Zhong that there was no need to go to Divine Dragon Island, because Qin Feiyang wouldn't hurt them, but he didn't dare to say it. Yi Cheng smiled and said, then wait for a while, I'll contact Li Buer. Hurry up, Yi Zhong urged. Yi Cheng nodded and turned off the image crystal. He got up and walked out of the cultivation room and towards the first floor. Done. In the cultivation room, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and thousands of pills flew in front of Fire Lotus. There's no need for so many. Fire Lotus was stunned. It's better to be prepared. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at the Blood Kirin, Zhao Tailai and the others who were surrounding him, and said, if you need it, you can get it from Fire Lotus. Okay. Everyone nodded excitedly. Young master. At this time, Yi Cheng ran in and whispered a few words into Qin Feiyang's ear. No way. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Cheng in astonishment. Why not? Big Brother wants us to meet him immediately. Yi Cheng said. What is it? Zhao Tailai and the others looked at the two suspiciously. This master of mine was afraid that I would sneak off to the underworld monarch's hell. To think that he wanted to send me to the Divine Dragon Island. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Everyone suddenly understood. The mermaid princess smiled and said, he cares about you. I don't deny that I care. However, I really cannot go to this Divine Dragon Island. If you go there, you won't be able to escape. Qin Feiyang shook his head. I don't want to go either. Although the Divine Dragon Island also has a time array, can it be compared to the Black Tortoise World and the ancient castle? Yi Cheng said. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Cheng and said with a sneaky smile, then why don't we go missing? Yi Cheng was taken aback. He said hesitantly, that's not a good idea. Qin Feiyang said. Otherwise, what are you going to say to him? This, Yi Cheng frowned. He really couldn't think of a better idea. Let's go missing. When I successfully sneak into the underworld monarch's hell, he won't be able to do anything when he finds me. As for you, just throw the image crystal into your cosmos ring, and stay here to cultivate. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Qing clenched his teeth and nodded. Fine. Before you come back from the underworld monarch's hell, I must break through to the half-step imperishable realm. As soon as he finished speaking, the image crystal rang. Yi Qing took out the image crystal, and said with a bitter smile. It must be Big Brother's message. Then what are you hesitating for? Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yi Qing pondered for a moment, then decisively threw the image crystal into his cosmos ring, and returned to his cultivation room. What a ruthless person. Everyone looked at Yi Cheng's back, and couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. If only Yi Zhong were as easy to talk to as Yi Cheng, how great would that be? Qin Feiyang shook his head. Take your time. There's no rush. Fire Lotus said with a smile. Okay. It seems that I can't go back to the Dragon God Palace now. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, then looked at everyone and said, I'll refine some more life-saving pills. You can go out. Then he looked at Fire Lotus and said with a smile, Help me prepare the herbs for the Divine Life pill. Everyone turned and left the cultivation room. Fire Lotus quickly took out a cosmos bag and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Next, Qin Feiyang focused on refining pills. Grandpa, we're done. Yi Shui and the linen-clothed old man came out of the wooden building and smiled at Yi Zhong, who was standing in the courtyard. But Yi Zhong didn't seem to hear it. Grandpa. Yi Shui walked forward and looked at Yi Zhong suspiciously. Ah, Yi Zhong came back to his senses and looked at the two of them. Are you done? Yes. Yi Shui nodded. The linen-clothed old man looked at Yi Zhong and asked, You look uneasy. Did something happen? No. Yi Zhong shook his head and frowned. It's Yi Cheng and Li Bu. What the hell are they doing? How did second grandpa offend you again? Yi Shui said. I just sent him a message, and he said that he would be back immediately. But in the blink of an eye, he ignored me? Yi Zhong said. How is that possible? Let me try. Yi Shui didn't believe it, and took out the image crystal. But after a while, Yi Qing didn't respond. This, Yi Shui couldn't be stunned. The linen-clothed old man said worriedly. Could something have happened? How is that possible? He was fine just now. I think Yi Qing must have been led astray by Li Bu and teamed up to fool me. Yi Zhong said angrily. Cough cough. Grandpa, don't always say that about him. Li Bu is actually quite good. Let's talk about it later. Second grandpa is already so old. Does he need Li Bu to lead him astray? Yi Shui was speechless. Now, she felt that in her grandfather's eyes, Li Bu could lead everyone astray. You're still speaking up for him? Yi Zhong glared at Yi Shui. Yi Shui smiled embarrassedly and said, Don't be angry. What should we do now? Yi Zhong pondered for a while and put away the image crystal. He said helplessly, I'll send you guys to Divine Dragon Island first. What about Li Bu and second grandpa? Yi Shui said. Li Bu I'm already sure that he wants to fish in troubled waters and enter hell. As for your second grandpa, he might have been instigated by Li Bu I'll send you guys to Divine Dragon Island first, then go to the plains to take a look. I don't believe that I can't find them. Yi Zhong snorted coldly. Then, he activated an altar and disappeared with the two of them. After daybreak, Yi Zhong really went to the plains personally to patrol. Outside the plains, there was a sea of people. But because there were too many people, he couldn't confirm them one by one. Soon, he turned around and left with a stomach full of anger. Another day passed. Early in the morning, there were even more people gathered outside the plains. Because today was the day that hell would open. At a glance, the sea of people was endless. Everyone looked at the plains, their hearts filled with anticipation. In the crowd, there were two inconspicuous old men in black. They had white hair and a walking stick in their hands. In the arms of one of the old men, there was even a small golden wolf. If Yi Zhong can still recognize us after we've disguised ourselves like this, then he really has discerning eyes. Before entering hell, anything can happen. We can't be careless. That's right. These two people were Qin Feiyang and Madman. As for the small golden wolf, it was the white-eyed wolf. Since coming to the ancient world, the white-eyed wolf had been cultivating in seclusion and rarely appeared. There were almost 0 people who knew of its existence. So, compared to Qin Feiyang and Madman, it was much safer and didn't need to be afraid of Yi Zhong's investigation. And before coming to the plains, Qin Feiyang had already sent Wang Qi, Lei Bing, and Jiang Dafei back. Lei Bing and Wang Qi had also broken through to the peak of the Nine Heavens realm. Madman suddenly pointed to the crowd on the left and said in a low voice, "Look at those people over there. They don't seem to be simple." Qin Feiyang looked over in surprise and saw 5 or 6 middle-aged men and women standing together in silence. And their auras were all concealed, making it difficult for people to see through them. And that old man over there, his cultivation is also unfathomable. I think he should be an imperishable realm expert. Madman pointed to a white-haired old man on the right. Imperishable realm. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat, and he turned his head to look. The white-haired old man looked very ordinary and didn't have any companions beside him, but his expression was very calm. To be able to be so calm at this time, his cultivation must be extraordinary. I wonder how many imperishable realm experts came this time, Madman said telepathically. Then why are they hiding their cultivation? The white-eyed wolf was suspicious. Nonsense. Of course they are hiding their cultivation. That's because not everyone is related to the dragon race. They are also afraid of being targeted by the dragons. In short, their purpose of going to the Nether King's Hell is to find opportunities, and they don't want to have anything to do with anyone. They don't want to participate in any disputes, especially the dispute between the dragons and the dragon-slaying palace. Madman thought, if they want to be alone, then why are they going to the Nether King's Hell? The white-eyed wolf snorted. Qin Feiyang said, everyone has their own aspirations, we shouldn't force some things. That's right. This time when we enter the Nether King's Hell, we mustn't show off. We will hide under the umbrella of the dragons and slowly look for opportunities. Madman nodded. Whoosh! Suddenly, a group of people came from the Dragon God mountain range. These people were all wearing the clothes of the Dragon God Palace. Qin Feiyang even had an impression of some of their faces. They were the disciples of the Dragon God Palace, and were also going to the Nether King's Hell. Of course, this was voluntary. As long as you are not afraid of death, it's up to you. Qin Feiyang glanced over and found that there were no less than 100,000 people. This number is just a drop in the ocean for the Dragon God Palace. It seems that most of the people in the Dragon God Palace are quite rational. Madman whispered. Qin Feiyang nodded. Whoosh! Not long after, another 3 groups of people arrived in a grandiose manner. Each side had no less than 100,000 people, and they were all wearing the clothes of the Dragon God Palace. Wait, I don't think I've seen them before, Qin Feiyang muttered. There was also a trace of suspicion in Madman's eyes. These people's cultivation wasn't low. Almost all of them were in the Nine Heavens realm. They seemed to be from the West, South, and East Divine Dragon Palace. Sure enough, the opening of the Nether King's Hell alarmed the entire Divine Land. Some people whispered. It turns out that they are from the West, South, and East Divine Dragon Palace. Qin Feiyang and Madman suddenly understood. Aren't Wu Baichuan and Du Yuntian also going to the Nether King's Hell? Quickly find them, where are they? Madman transmitted his voice. Chapter 2572. After carefully searching for a while, Qin Feiyang and Madman finally found Du Yuntian and Madman in the crowd. The 2 of them were standing in the East and West Dragon God Palace camps. But compared to before, they were extremely low-key now. Standing in the crowd, they were silent, and their auras were concealed. If one didn't pay attention, one wouldn't notice them. Do you think they entered the East and West Dragon God Palace for the same reason as you? For the Divine Stone of Fate? Madman transmitted his voice. Divine Stone of Fate? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and shook his head. It's not that I look down on them. But how can they get the Divine Stone of Fate? You really look down on them. Actually, these 2 are quite powerful. But because they don't have any heaven-defying divine artifacts and techniques, compared to you, they are a lot dimmer. Madman secretly said. Indeed. They don't look that old. But to have such cultivation, how can they be ordinary people? Perhaps when you enter the Nether King's hell, you will understand how terrifying they are. White-Eyed Wolf echoed. Because in the Nether King's hell, all of Qin Feiyang's trump cards would be restricted. At that time, he could only rely on his own cultivation and strength to deal with the unknown. Perhaps, he might even suffer a great loss under the hands of these two. I hope so, Qin Feiyang whispered. After all, they were all young lords of the dragon-slaying palace. If they were too weak, then it wouldn't be fun. However, compared to these two, he was more curious about the young lord in the south. Even Hui and the five-clawed golden dragon couldn't find out the identity of this person, as if this person didn't exist at all. Such a mysterious person wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Qin Feiyang looked at the Southern Dragon God Palace. The Southern Dragon God Palace also had hundreds of thousands of people, but after observing for a long time, Qin Feiyang still didn't know who this young lord was. Or perhaps this person didn't come at all. The sun had already risen high in the sky. Swish! Suddenly, two figures descended on the plains, and a terrifying aura enveloped the entire place. It was Yi Zhong and the young man. The young man yawned, looking dispirited. The snow python turned into the size of a palm and laid on the young man's shoulder. It seemed to be affected by the young man, as it also looked drowsy. He also wants to enter the hell of the underworld king? Madman looked at the young man in shock. Everything is within my expectations. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. What do you mean? Madman was taken aback and asked. This young man's background is unknown, and his strength is unfathomable. Yi Zhong will definitely not be at ease leaving him in the Dragon God Palace. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. That's true. Madman nodded. Greetings, Grand Hall Master. The people of the East, South, West, and Dragon God Palace all half knelt in the air to welcome him. As the Grand Hall Master of the Dragon God Palace, he was naturally famous in the Divine Land. Other than the people from the Dragon God's Palace, everyone else also bowed. Quick, pay your respects. Qin Feiyang dragged the madman and quickly bent down. Why should I bow? Madman looked at him with displeasure. If everyone salutes, but we don't, wouldn't that attract Yi Zhong's attention? Qin Feiyang secretly said. Madman nodded in realization. Indeed, they couldn't attract too much attention. Actually, fortunately, Qin Feiyang thought of this. Otherwise they would definitely be discovered by Yi Zhong. Because while everyone was bowing, Yi Zhong's eyes were like torches, sweeping across everyone. Obviously, he was looking for Qin Feiyang. Because according to Qin Feiyang's usual performance in the Dragon God Palace, he would definitely stand with his back straight. However, the result disappointed him. Did he not come? Yi Zhong frowned. Impossible. This brat definitely wouldn't miss this opportunity. He must be hiding in the crowd. He actually bowed along with everyone else. How wronged. Then this old man wants to see how long you can endure. Yi Zhong rolled his eyes and shouted. Everyone kneel down for this old man. What? Kneel down? Qin Feiyang and the madman's expression froze. Why should we kneel? Someone asked puzzledly. Among them, there were also many people who didn't want to kneel. Yi Zhong said sincerely. Hell needs tens of thousands of people to kowtow before it appears. This is nonsense, right? White-Eyed Wolf transmitted his voice. It must be nonsense. This old man knows that we won't easily kneel to anyone, so he deliberately did this. Qin Feiyang secretly said. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. Then what should we do? The madman frowned. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything and glanced at the others. Everyone looked at each other, and finally believed Yi Zhong's words, and knelt on the ground one after another. They are fools. White-Eyed Wolf was speechless. Don't blame them. That's because they know nothing about the Nether King or Hell. Yi Zhong has the final say. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Brat, you are still too inexperienced to play tricks with this old man. This old man doesn't believe that you will kneel down. Yi Zhong secretly sneered, and paid close attention to everyone present. Soon, everyone knelt down, and only Qin Feiyang and the madman were still standing. Yi Zhong immediately looked at the two and coldly shouted, Why aren't you kneeling? Hearing Yi Zhong's shout, everyone also looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. He turned around and swept his gaze over everyone. Then, he secretly took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into his mouth with the speed of a thunderbolt. This was not a pill, but an illusion pill. Because he wanted to change back to Li Buer's appearance, he had to take the illusion pill. If he took the pill, he would directly restore his true appearance. The madman also smiled helplessly and took out a pill and threw it into his mouth. Yi Zhong's mouth immediately raised into a smug smile. "Greetings, master." "Greetings, Grand Hall Master." The two of them flew up, their expressions full of frustration. Yi Zhong joked, "Hell is about to open, so what if you kneel down?" "Master, you can't do this." Qin Feiyang was dissatisfied. "Why do you still look unhappy? Do you know that in order to find you, this old man racked his brains to come up with this method?" Yi Zhong secretly shouted angrily. Qin Feiyang quickly said, I'm sorry, it's this disciple's fault. But this disciple really wants to go to hell." "No." Yi Zhong decisively shook his head and secretly said, "Go to Divine Dragon Island immediately." "Madman, you go too." "Not going." The two of them shook their heads. Yi Zhong immediately blew his beard and glared, and transmitted his voice. "Do you know how dangerous hell is?" "I don't know. But we're not afraid." Qin Feiyang secretly said. "You." Yi Zhong glared at Qin Feiyang angrily. Why was he so stubborn? "Yi Zhong, why don't you let them go? It's good to broaden their horizons." The young man next to him suddenly said. Yi Zhong coldly snorted. "You make it sound nice, but when they encounter danger, you'll protect them?" "This young master will protect them?" The young man was stunned. Qin Feiyang and the madman immediately cast a pleading look at the young man. The young man shook his head and smiled, saying, "Okay, this young master will protect them." Yi Zhong was stunned. He actually agreed. "Master, the safety problem has been solved. You won't object now, right?" Qin Feiyang secretly laughed. Madman's gaze shifted as he looked at Yi Zhong and said, "Actually, I entered the Underworld King's Hell to meet Qin Feiyang." Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned, glanced at the madman, and hurriedly nodded. This disciple also wants to meet Qin Feiyang. "You really won't cry until you're in the coffin." "Okay. Don't regret it when the time comes." Yi Zhong snorted through his nose. "Thank you, master." Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. Yi Zhong glared at him and secretly asked, "Where's Yi Cheng?" "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "You don't know? Kid, do you still want to go to hell or not?" "If you want to go, tell this old man the truth," Yi Zhong said angrily. Qin Feiyang was helpless, and said with a sound transmission, "I knew he was hiding somewhere to cultivate." "Where?" Yi Zhong frowned. He didn't even go to the Divine Dragon Island. Was Yi Cheng stupid? Didn't he know that there was a time formation on the Divine Dragon Island? "How would I know? Yesterday, he sent a message to this disciple, and only said that you were going to send us to the Divine Dragon Island. He didn't reveal anything else." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "None of them are easy to worry about." Yi Zhong's face was filled with anger. "Lord Grand Hall Master, is hell still going to open? How long are you going to make us kneel?" Below, there were already people who were dissatisfied. Yi Zhong sorted out his emotions and said expressionlessly, "It will open immediately." Finished. Yi Zhong raised his arm and opened his palm. With a clanging sound, a stone door appeared in front of him. The stone door was as if it was condensed from blood. It was completely blood red, and emitted a monstrous baleful aura. Moreover, on both sides of the stone door there was a skull. 2 balls of blood-red flames floated in its eye sockets, making it look extremely sinister. Everyone looked at the stone door curiously. Was this the hell of the King of Hell? "Rise!" Following Yi Zhong's explosive shout, the stone door floated in the air and began to expand with the wind. The baleful aura became more and more terrifying. It was as if a demon king had been born, and the blood light dyed the entire plain red. Finally, a giant stone door that was hundreds of feet tall appeared out of nowhere. That terrifying baleful aura was as if countless demon kings had awakened, causing everyone present to feel a chill in their hearts. "I'm not going. I'm not going either." A stone door already has such a terrifying baleful aura. Then how scary would it be inside hell? Before the stone door even opened, many people felt fear in their hearts. Even the strongest experts hidden in the crowd couldn't help but hesitate. Open! Yi Zhong shouted in a low voice. With a loud clang, the stone door slowly opened. An even more terrifying baleful aura surged out like a torrent. In an instant, everyone felt as if they had fallen into the abyss of hell, and their bodies couldn't help but tremble. In their hearts, there was a fear that couldn't be dispelled. What kind of place was hell? How could the baleful aura be so terrifying? Could it really be the legendary hell? I'm really not going. I'm leaving now. Someone screamed in horror, got up and fled without looking back. With someone taking the lead, there would naturally be people following. For a time, thousands of people fled from this place, frightened by this baleful aura. Not to mention these people, even Qin Feiyang and Madman couldn't help but be frightened. They had experienced a lot of killing, but at this moment, under the shroud of this baleful aura, they couldn't help but feel scared. Chapter 2573. The most terrifying thing was that this murderous aura seemed to be able to affect one's mind. It made one feel despair in their heart. Looking at those people fleeing, Yi Zhong did not stop them and said lightly, "It's not too late to leave now." At this moment, basically everyone was hesitating. Originally, they were looking forward to it. But when they saw the opening of hell, they couldn't help but be afraid. Clang! About a moment later, the stone door finally opened completely. A blood-red passage appeared. Woo! Woo! Roar! In the passage, the wind whistled and the blood light surged. In the blood light, there seemed to be ghosts roaring and laughing, making one's scalp tingle. As a result, the entire plane seemed to have turned into an azure purgatory. I'm leaving too. This place is definitely not a place to go. My life is more important. Even more people fled the area in fear. Even many people left the east, south, west and Dragon God Palace. But only a small part of them left. Most people still wanted to go in. Because the more dangerous the place, the greater the opportunity. How is it possible to obtain good fortune without experiencing danger? Phew! Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and turned to look at Frenzy. He found that Frenzy was staring at the blood-red passage in the stone door with a hint of excitement in his eyes. This made Qin Feiyang speechless. Frenzy was indeed worthy of being called Frenzy to be excited. In half an hour, the stone door will automatically close. Those who want to go in should do it early. Yi Zhong shouted. It will close in half an hour? Everyone was shocked. Qin Feiyang glanced at the crowd with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. Why didn't he see anyone from the dragons? Chief Pavilion Master and Beast Emperor were nowhere to be seen. However, as Yi Zhong's voice fell, no one entered the stone door. Because other than the dragons, they knew nothing about hell, and did not want to be cannon fodder. Whoosh! But suddenly, a figure rushed out from the crowd, and rushed toward the stone door like lightning. Everyone looked over, and saw a young man in blood-red robes who looked like a demon. His long hair was dyed red with blood. Furthermore, his body was emitting a frightening baleful aura. However, his cultivation level was very low. He was only at the advanced stage of the War God stage. No way! You dare to enter the Underworld King's hell, with only the cultivation of a great success War God. Everyone was bewildered. Was this kid looking for death? Yi Zhong also looked at the blood-red clothed youth in surprise. Who would have thought that the first person to fly towards the stone door would be a great success War God? How could it be him? At the same time, Qin Feiyang murmured as he stared at the young man's back. You know him? Madman asked. Yes. He is from Yunshan village. His name is Li Feng. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. That was right. This young man in blood-red clothes was none other than Li Feng, who had left without saying a word. Li Feng, stop, Qin Feiyang murmured. However, Li Feng turned a deaf ear to him. He rushed into the stone door without looking back, and disappeared into the tunnel. He is indeed different from before. Qin Feiyang murmured. He glanced at Madman and said, Let's go. The two of them rushed into the stone door, while Yi Zhong was not paying attention. Bastard! Yi Zhong was stunned for a moment, then he started to curse in exasperation. Don't worry. This young master will protect them well. The young man smiled faintly and walked toward the stone door. What do you know? The Nether King's hell is random. Yi Zhong murmured. What? Random? The young man was stunned. That's right. After entering, everyone will appear in different places. The Nether King's hell is not smaller than the Divine Land. If we don't tell them the rendezvous point in advance, we won't be able to find them. Yi Zhong was furious. Then let's not find them. Let's meet again. Hearing this, the young man yawned and disappeared into the stone door. Not find them? Yi Zhong's expression stiffened, and he became more and more angry. What kind of people are these? Do they know how terrifying the Nether King's hell is? Back to Qin Feiyang. After entering the bloody tunnel, his vision was immediately blood-red. He saw that there was blood mist all around. The murderous aura was astonishing, and this blood mist was pervasive. It crazily drilled into his body through the pores all over his body. He could clearly feel that whether it was his physical body, divine power, or blood, they were all being swallowed by the blood mist. In fact, even his life force was flowing away. Noticing this abnormality, Qin Feiyang's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly said, Senior brother madman white-eyed wolf, do you feel your vitality flowing away? However, his voice echoed in the surroundings for a long time, but there was no response. Senior brother madman? White-eyed wolf. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He hurriedly turned around and looked around. There was no sign of madman. He was looking down at his arms. The white-eyed wolf had also disappeared. What's going on? Qin Feiyang was immediately surprised. He clearly remembered that he and Madman had entered the stone door together. The white-eyed wolf had also been in his arms the whole time. But why did they disappear in the blink of an eye? Moreover, he didn't feel anything about the disappearance of Madman and the white-eyed wolf at all. Why was it like this? Fire Lotus great-grandmother. Old Zhao. Hui, Qin Feiyang shouted again. But Fire Lotus and the others didn't respond to him. He hurriedly sensed the ancient castle and the Black Tortoise world, but was shocked to find that he couldn't feel the existence of the ancient castle and the Black Tortoise world. This, for a moment. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but lose his composure. Although Yi Zhong had said a long time ago that after entering the Underworld King's Hell, one couldn't enter or exit the spatial divine object. But Qin Feiyang had always thought that even if one couldn't enter or exit the spatial divine object, they could at least get in touch. However, he didn't expect that it would actually completely cut off the connection with the spatial divine object. The nature of this had become completely different. In other words, from this moment on, no matter what happened outside, Fire Lotus and the others wouldn't know. Similarly, no matter what happened in the ancient castle and the Black Tortoise world, Qin Feiyang wouldn't know. Calm down. Qin Feiyang kept taking deep breaths. At this time, he mustn't lose his composure. Finally, after dozens of breaths, he calmed down and looked around. The blood mist filled the air, and he could only see half a meter away. His feet didn't move. In other words, he was now standing in the bloody passage. However, he could vaguely feel that he was shuttling through the bloody passage at this moment. And the speed of shuttling was quite fast. He lowered his head and looked at his arms again, but there was still no trace of the white-eyed wolf. What was going on? Could it be an illusion? He pinched his arm hard. It was very painful. This proved that it wasn't an illusion. The frenzy and the white-eyed wolf had indeed disappeared. I was careless. I shouldn't have chased Li Feng. Qin Feiyang muttered. Li Feng didn't catch up, and instead lost the frenzy and the white-eyed wolf. The gains didn't make up for the losses. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's body shook violently, and a wave of dizziness came from his head. Qin Feiyang was shocked. He lowered his head and looked at his hands, only to find that they were only skin and bones. His qi and blood were draining too fast. He hurriedly took out a divine life pill and threw it into his mouth. But even the divine life pill with 4 dragon-shaped pill qi couldn't replenish it in time. He took out a dozen divine life pills and stuffed them all into his mouth. Boundless life energy suddenly exploded in his body, nourishing his body that was about to dry up. But he found that the blood mist that poured into his body was becoming more and more terrifying. It was like gangrene attached to the bone that couldn't be removed. Even divine power couldn't dispel or refine it. At this moment, he couldn't help but think of the frenzy and the white-eyed wolf again, and his eyes were full of worry, because he didn't expect that the frenzy and the white-eyed wolf would disappear. So the pills that he prepared in advance were all on him. He didn't need to worry too much about the frenzy. After all, the frenzy had always been alone in the northern region, so he must have a lot of pills on him. But Qin Feiyong knew the white-eyed wolf very well. Not to mention the divine life pill. He probably didn't even have a single medicinal herb on him. Although he didn't know where the white-eyed wolf and the frenzy were, he knew that they must be experiencing the same thing as him. Could the white-eyed wolf leave the passage alive and enter the Nether King's hell? Wolf cub, nothing must happen to you, Qin Feiyong murmured. It was useless to worry now, so he could only pray silently in his heart. Nether King's hell, trespassers die. Suddenly, a loud roar sounded in front of him like thunder. Qin Feiyong's blood immediately surged. What's that? Qin Feiyong was startled and looked up. But the blood mist was too thick, and he couldn't see anything at all. Moreover, except for the roar, he didn't sense any terrifying aura. However, Qin Feiyong could feel that a fatal crisis was rapidly approaching. So, Qin Feiyong closed his eyes and paid attention to the movements around him. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's body and mind tightened, and he took a step to the side without hesitation. Just as he moved away, a fist the size of a millstone appeared from the blood mist. Although this fist didn't hit Qin Feiyong, the whistling wind blew Qin Feiyong away, and blood gushed out of his mouth. This, Qin Feiyong immediately opened his eyes, and his face was full of horror. Just the wind brought by the fist seriously injured him? How strong was the owner of this fist? His first thought was to activate the kill formula. But he suddenly thought of the rule force mentioned by Yi Zhong, and decisively gave up this idea. How dare you dodge? The fist was hidden in the blood mist. The roar sounded again, and it was right next to Qin Feiyong's ear. That fist appeared once again. Humph! Qin Feiyong snorted coldly, took out the coiling dragon staff, and instantly recovered, and smashed it with the staff. Boom! The fist and the coiling dragon staff collided violently. Qin Feiyong was once again sent flying. His arm was also shaken by the frightening power, and his flesh was lacerated. Even the coiling dragon staff had cracks on it. So strong? Qin Feiyong was shocked. One should know that the coiling dragon staff was a legendary divine artifact, but it was broken by a punch? Such a weak ant actually dares to come to Nether King's hell. You will die here for me. That voice sounded again, and it was filled with a strong sense of contempt. Chapter 2574. The mysterious enemy once again tried to kill Qin Feiyong. But this time, it wasn't a fist, but a giant hand the size of a dustpan. Those 5 fingers were like iron rods, fiercely swinging at Qin Feiyong. Boom! Qin Feiyong was sent flying on the spot, blood gushing out of his body. The coiling dragon staff was also torn to pieces. After Qin Feiyong stabilized his body, he quickly put away the coiling dragon staff, took out dozens of life divine pills, and stuffed them into his mouth. Not dead. The mysterious enemy was surprised, his voice drifting. Qin Feiyong glanced at the blood mist around and shouted, "Come out if you have the ability, don't hide. You are not qualified to see my real face. This time, you will die without a doubt." The mysterious enemy was extremely disdainful. A terrifying divine power, like a tide, broke through the layers of blood mist and surged towards Qin Feiyong. "Do you really think I am made of mud?" Qin Feiyong shouted angrily, raised his hand and pointed in the air. An invisible energy, like a volcanic eruption, surged out from the tip of his finger. Soul destruction technique. It wasn't difficult to judge the opponent's cultivation level. It must be at the Paragon God level. Because, if the opponent's cultivation level was at the 9 Heavens realm, he would have been dead by now. If they were both at the Paragon God level, the soul destruction technique would be enough to kill this person instantly. Because the soul destruction technique could ignore all defenses and go straight for the divine soul. "This is," the mysterious enemy exclaimed. "Ah!" The next moment, a painful scream sounded in the void to the left. Immediately after, This place quieted down. If a tiger doesn't show its power, you think I'm a sick cat. Qin Feiyong snorted coldly. Haha. You can't even be considered a sick cat. You're at most a small and pitiful worm. The mysterious enemy's laughter suddenly sounded. What? Not dead? Qin Feiyong was shocked. A killing technique that can kill one's divine soul is indeed powerful. Unfortunately, I am immortal and indestructible. The mysterious enemy laughed madly. A huge hand suddenly appeared behind Qin Feiyong and grabbed Qin Feiyong, roaring, "Go to hell!" Those 5 fingers exerted a crazy amount of force. Qin Feiyong was grabbed by the giant hand, and he was as small as an ant. Blood was gushing out from his pores, and his mortal body was deformed. The severe pain made Qin Feiyong's face contort. Haha. It must be very painful, right? It must be very desperate. I haven't even entered the hell of the King of Hell, and I'm going to die here. The mysterious enemy laughed loudly. You're courting death. Qin Feiyong enunciated each word clearly, and his body suddenly emitted a pure white light. Clang! Following closely, a white battle armor appeared. It flickered with divine light, untainted by a speck of dust, appearing incomparably divine. Sovereign tier divine art, heavenly deity armor. As soon as the heavenly deity armor appeared, the pain on Qin Feiyong's face disappeared. In the next moment, a wave of fire and thunder roared out, and a destructive aura enveloped all directions. Sovereign tier divine art, fire thunder divine art. What? Sovereign tier divine art. The mysterious enemy was shocked. Fire thunder divine art, fully activate. Qin Feiyong roared. Boom. Kacha. Chi-chi. A huge pool of lightning rose into the sky, and the fiery red power of thunder and lightning enveloped all directions. Ah! The mysterious enemy screamed again. The giant hand that grabbed Qin Feiyong also quickly let go and retracted back into the blood mist. But this time, Qin Feiyong clearly captured the position of the mysterious enemy. With a wave of his hand, the pool of lightning immediately turned into a torrent, surging towards the mysterious enemy. We will meet again. Next time, you won't be so lucky. Haha. After a presumptuous laugh, the mysterious enemy finally disappeared, and everything slowly returned to normal. However, Qin Feiyong wasn't happy at all. We will meet again next time? That meant that this person was not dead. It was too strange that he was not dead. Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's eyes had a trace of surprise. He did not notice it before. But now that the crisis was over, he immediately realized that the voice of this mysterious enemy seemed to be somewhat familiar. He seemed to have seen it before. But for a moment, he could not find any relevant information in his memory. He should have seen it many years ago. But that was not right. Many years ago, he was either in Great Qin, Forgotten Continent, or in the Miracle Wait. It was a miracle. He seemed to have heard this voice in the miracle. It was Fire Dragon. Qin Feiyong's eyes suddenly trembled. That's right, it was the Fire Dragon's voice. That was the Fire Dragon who guarded the entrance to the Black Tortoise world and killed the Fire Python's father. Wait a minute. Qin Feiyong clearly remembered that this Fire Dragon had gone to the 3rd level of the miracle. But why would he appear in the hell of the Nether King? Could it be that it was just their voices that were similar? And it was not the Fire Dragon? But similar. It could not be to this extent. The voice of the mysterious enemy and the Fire Dragon were exactly the same. What was going on? Could it be that this hell of the Nether King was the 3rd level of the miracle? Was that really the case? Qin Feiyong was very surprised. To be honest, he really hoped that was the case. Because this way, he could enter the 3rd level of the miracle and find the inner demons and big cousin. Before seeing their corpses, he was not willing to believe that they were really dead. Even if they were really dead, he would find their corpses and send them back to their homeland. Hell of the Nether King. The 3rd level of the miracle. Don't let me down, Qin Feiyong muttered. From the previous situation, the Fire Dragon did not recognize him. After all, he was Li Buer now, and he did not use the previous divine arts, such as the Guiyuan sword technique, the Ruins of End technique, or the Eclipse of Sun and Moon. The next time they met, the Fire Dragon must die, because he had promised the Fire Python that he would help kill the Fire Dragon. Next, Qin Feiyang did not encounter any more danger, but the horror of the blood mist also made him very anxious. His vitality, blood, and divine power were all being crazily devoured by the blood mist. Even his divine soul gradually began to be threatened. His divine soul had been protected by the soul-stabilizing pearl. The only function of the soul-stabilizing pearl was to protect the divine soul. At first, under the protection of the soul-stabilizing pearl, the blood mist could not get close to the divine soul. But slowly, as the blood mist in the sea of consciousness increased, the soul-stabilizing pearl gradually began to become more and more strenuous. At this rate, the soul-stabilizing pearl's defense would be destroyed by the blood mist sooner or later. How long will it take to enter the hell of the Nether King? Qin Feiyang frowned, constantly taking life pills to replenish his blood and vitality. And he also began to take divine power pills to replenish his divine power. He was also very glad. Fortunately, he had the foresight to refine a large number of pills in advance. Otherwise he would definitely be finished now. In the beginning, he had refined more than 100,000 life pills, plus other pills. He estimated that there would be at least 200,000 pills. Before the hell of the Nether King opened, he refined another batch of pills. Now, he had at least 500,000 pills on him. Most of them were life pills, followed by divine power pills. The reason why there were fewer divine power pills was because divine crystals could also replenish divine power. For example, Qin Feiyang had refined thousands of heavenly dust pills. In short, in order to survive in the hell of the Nether King, he had made comprehensive preparations. It was just that the madman and the white-eyed wolf, he was now more and more worried. Before entering the hell of the Nether King, he should have given the madman and the white-eyed wolf some pills. The irritation in his heart appeared again. He couldn't suppress it. But at this moment, Qin Feiyang was suddenly taken aback. There seemed to be a wind. He closed his eyes and after careful observation, he found that there was indeed a wind blowing. It was just that this wind was very weak. If he didn't sense it carefully, he wouldn't have noticed it. Immediately, he opened his eyes, and a trace of joy crept into his eyes. Since there was wind, it meant that the exit was not far away. His body automatically shuttled through the passage. As time passed little by little, the wind became stronger and stronger, blowing his clothes and hair into a mess. About 10 breaths passed. The blood mist in front of him began to gradually fade. As the blood mist became thinner and thinner, Qin Feiyang finally saw a light spot in front of him. Is that the exit? Qin Feiyang murmured. Now that there was a light spot, he could clearly see that his body was shuttling toward the light spot at lightning speed. The light spot was getting bigger and bigger, and slowly became clearer. It was a huge circle of light, like a full moon, exuding the aura of the saint god. Through the circle of light, one could already vaguely see the scenery outside. Outside the circle of light, there was a vast land, which seemed a little dim. The void also seemed to be filled with wisps of blood mist. And there were mountains, water, and also grass and trees. But now, what Qin Feiyang could see was only the tip of the iceberg. Boom! Seeing that the exit was getting closer and closer, at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly emerged. Qin Feiyang thought it was an enemy, and immediately instinctively glanced around. But in the end, he found that the aura came from outside the circle of light. He raised his head, and stared outside the circle of light. Suddenly, a behemoth appeared in his line of sight. It was actually a giant that was more than 10 meters tall. And it looked exactly like a human. It had a nose, eyes, mouth, and limbs. It looked like a middle-aged man. His body was extremely tall and sturdy. His upper body was exposed, and his muscles were filled with an explosive divine power. His 2 eyes were as big as millstones. But the strange thing was that his 2 eyes seemed to be condensed out of blood, like 2 blood moons. And the aura it exuded was extremely terrifying. There are indigenous people in hell? Looking at the blood-eyed giant, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. This head was too big, wasn't it? Judging from the aura that the blood-eyed giant exuded, it was at least a half step to the 9th heaven state. Boom! Crack! The blood-eyed giant came closer and closer, step by step on the ground. Every step it took, the mountains and rivers would collapse, as if there was an earthquake. Wait. Qin Feiyong gradually realized that the blood-eyed giant seemed to be coming for the circle of light. This was because the blood-eyed giant's gaze was fixed on the circle of light, and its large blood-red eyes were filled with curiosity. It seems that the circle of light has attracted him. This is not good. Qin Feiyong smiled bitterly. As soon as he went out, he would have to face such a behemoth, and its cultivation was not weak. Chapter 2575. The blood-eyed giant stopped in front of the light circle and looked at it suspiciously. It seemed that it couldn't see Qin Feiyong inside. Suddenly, the blood-eyed giant raised its hand, which was bigger than a dustpan, and approached the light circle. At this moment, Qin Feiyong was also approaching the light circle. Seeing the giant hand, his expression changed slightly, and he instinctively wanted to stop. But his body was moving automatically, and he couldn't control it at all. If he was caught by the blood-eyed giant, he might be crushed into minced meat. Boom! Qin Feiyong released his divine power and was about to attack. But at this moment, the light circle suddenly emitted a dazzling divine light. The blood-eyed giant's hand was blocked outside. Moreover, a strong rebounding force appeared and sent the blood-eyed giant flying. With a loud bang, the blood-eyed giant smashed into the ground in the distance. A mountain collapsed and the ground shattered. Roar! The blood-eyed giant got up and let out a beast-like roar. It raised its huge fist and punched the light circle. I can't be that unlucky. At this moment, Qin Feiyong had already arrived in front of the light circle and was about to leave. He was complaining in his heart. If he went out now, wouldn't he have to take this punch? But his body wasn't under his control. Phew! Qin Feiyong took a deep breath. Since he couldn't avoid it, then he would fight it head-on. Boom! He decisively activated the Wisdom King Golden Body. The moment he activated the Wisdom King Golden Body, his body left the light circle. The blood-eyed giant's fist was about to hit him. With a loud bang, the fist landed on Qin Feiyong's body. But with the Wisdom King Golden Body, he wasn't injured at all. Qin Feiyong hurriedly retreated. He looked at the light circle in the sky and saw that it was disappearing quickly. The blood-eyed giant was also stunned. Why did it seem that a small thing appeared? He looked at the disappearing light circle and glanced at the void in front of him. When he saw Qin Feiyong, a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. Wasn't this person a little too young? Big guy, let's talk nicely, Qin Feiyong said as he retreated, his eyes full of vigilance. But could this giant understand human language? Hearing Qin Feiyong's words, the blood-eyed giant was stunned. Then, it looked at Qin Feiyong with anger in its eyes. Roar! Suddenly, the blood-eyed giant thumped its chest and stomped its feet as it roared towards the sky. It then raised its giant hand and slapped towards Qin Feiyong. What's the situation? Qin Feiyong was taken aback for a moment. Then he quickly teleported away. Judging from its aura, this big fellow was indeed a half-step into the ninth heaven realm. In a situation where he was unable to activate the 6-word divine formula, he did not dare to risk his life against this fellow. First of all, no matter how powerful a supreme-grade divine art was, it would not be able to break through the barrier of a major realm. Even if he could defeat the blood-eyed giant, he would be severely injured. Secondly, he knew nothing about this place. Who knew if there were other blood-eyed giants nearby? Therefore it was best to avoid it as much as possible. However, that blood-eyed giant followed closely behind, and its speed was faster than Qin Feiyong's. Every step it took shook the mountains, as if there was an earthquake. The violent aura was earth-shattering. Mountains collapsed one after another, and huge footprints were left on the ground. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. Suddenly, a smile crept onto his face, but it instantly disappeared without a trace. He did not go to the ancient castle, or the Black Tortoise world. Instead, he activated the concealment art. The blood-eyed giant was slightly taken aback as it scanned the void. Where was he? Gradually, a monstrous evil aura rose from its body. Damn shorty, don't let me see you again, the blood-eyed giant roared. After destroying the nearby mountains, it turned around and disappeared into the horizon. In the distance, on a certain mountain peak, Qin Feiyong stood at the edge of the cliff and looked at the blood-eyed giant's back with lingering fear. This fellow was really terrifying. But this blood-eyed giant could actually speak the human language? Originally, he thought that since the blood-eyed giant was a native of the underworld king's hell, its words would definitely be different. And he definitely wouldn't understand. But he didn't expect that it was no different from what they said. But why did this big guy hate him so much? Damn dwarfs. Don't let me see you again. These words seemed to have some deep hatred. But this was his first time in the underworld king's hell. What deep hatred could he have with this blood-eyed giant? Forget it. Qin Feiyong shook his head. He would slowly understand it in the future. He began to curiously scan the world. This world was very strange. A blood-red sun hung in the sky. Even the clouds were blood-red. It looked extremely demonic. The ground was no different from the outside world. The mountains rose and fell, the peaks stacked on top of each other, emitting a majestic aura. Moreover, there were also extremely lush plants growing in the mountains. It was just that he didn't recognize any of these plants. Moreover, whether it was the trees or the grass, they were all suffused with traces of blood-red light. Qin Feiyong withdrew his gaze and looked at the surrounding mountain peaks. On the mountain peaks, there were many weeds and shrubs, all suffused with wisps of blood-red light. What's different about this? Qin Feiyong muttered, squatting on the ground, found a green foxtail grass, and looked at it suspiciously. This green foxtail grass was actually not much different from the one outside. The only difference was that its leaves were a little red, giving people the feeling that it had grown by absorbing blood. But suddenly, Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. He actually felt as if something had drilled into his palm and surged into his body. What's going on? He hurriedly looked into his body and found that it was actually wisps of blood-red energy. This energy came from the green foxtail grass in his hand. And he also found that the blood-red energy emitted by the green foxtail grass was actually the same as the blood fog in the passage. It had the ability to rob blood, devour divine power, and erode the divine soul. Could it be? Qin Feiyong looked up at the blood-red sun in the sky. Could it be that all this had something to do with the sun? Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's body shook, and the dizziness in his mind came again. He hurriedly threw away the green foxtail grass in his hand, found a stone, and sat on it with his legs crossed. This dizziness was actually not caused by the green foxtail grass. The energy contained in the green foxtail grass was not enough to pose a threat to the divine soul. The truth was, the blood fog that had drilled into his body in the bloody passage had not dissipated. At this time, it was constantly disintegrating the protective film of the soul's settling divine pearl. If this blood fog was not quickly refined or expelled, it would inevitably bring a great threat to him. However, after waiting for an hour, the concealment spell had disappeared. But this blood fog had only been refined a little. He also tried to expel this blood fog from his body, but it was impossible. This blood fog seemed to have taken root in his body. It can't go on like this. Qin Feiyong got up and glanced around. He had to find a hidden place to refine this blood fog first. Otherwise, before he could find the madman and the white-eyed wolf, he would have been eroded by the blood fog first. Nothing must happen to you, Qin Feiyong murmured, opened up a cave residence on the giant peak under his feet, and then sealed the cave residence with divine power. Then, he sat cross-legged in the cave residence, took out a life divine pill, and recovered the lost qi and blood while refining the blood fog in his body. What the hell is this place? At the same time, in the sky above a certain barren forest, a small golden wolf stood in the air and scanned its surroundings. Its face was filled with confusion. That's right. It was the white-eyed wolf. Die! Suddenly, a violent roar sounded. A giant rushed out of the barren forest below. It was also a blood-eyed giant. But different from the giant Qin Feiyong encountered, it was a woman. Her body was extremely burly. Her height was also more than 10 meters. She was wearing a black armor and had a fierce aura. Furthermore, her cultivation had reached the initial 9 heavens realm. The white-eyed wolf was startled, and he turned to look at the blood-eyed giant. What the hell is this? While the white-eyed wolf was still in a daze, the giant arrived. His fist, the size of a dustpan, smashed towards the white-eyed wolf like a meteor. The white-eyed wolf took a step back and dodged the fist. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Hey, hey, hey, can you not fight as soon as you see me? After all, I'm a pacifist." "You foreign bandits, you all deserve to die." The blood-eyed giant roared and spread out its 5 fingers. Its huge hand carried an ear-piercing sound of wind and thunder as it slapped towards the white-eyed wolf. "Bandits. Foreign ones." The white-eyed wolf paused and asked, "So, you're a native of the underworld king's hell?" But the blood-eyed giant ignored him, and his blood-red eyes flashed fiercely like a beast's. "Looks like you're really a native of this place. I was worried that no one could answer my questions. You came at the right time." The white-eyed wolf grinned. Boom! A monstrous aura appeared. It was a half-step ninth heaven state. After eating the yin-yang chaos pill, it successfully broke through 2 stages and stepped into the half-step ninth heaven state. Then, the white-eyed wolf raised his claw and slammed it at the blood-eyed giant. From afar, it looked like a small mosquito had collided with an elephant. But a shocking scene appeared. Although the blood-eyed giant's cultivation was 1 stage higher than the white-eyed wolf, the white-eyed wolf sent the blood-eyed giant flying with a single claw. "How can this be?" The blood-eyed giant kept retreating, his face filled with shock. "I'll give you a chance. Tell me everything, or I'll eat you alive." The ingrate walked towards the blood-eyed giant with a look of disdain on its face. At the same time, in the sky above a valley, a black-clothed youth was running for his life, his body covered in blood. This youth was Madman. Behind the madman was a black leopard. The leopard was several hundred meters long. Its eyes seemed to be made of blood. Its cultivation had also reached the half-step ninth heaven state. Why is the person who came this time so weak? A puny paramount god dares to come to the underworld king's hell? Aren't you courting death? Stop running. It's useless. The blood-eyed black leopard leisurely followed behind Madman and laughed. It looked like it was teasing Madman. "Fuck you. If you have the ability, wait for me to break through to the ninth heaven state, and see how I'll beat you to death." Madman was furious. He had just entered the underworld king's hell, and hadn't figured out the situation. But he was ambushed by this beast, and was heavily injured. Chapter 2576. Wait until you reach the 9 heavens realm. Why don't you say wait until you reach the imperishable realm? The blood-eyed leopard sneered. Imperishable realm? The madman's heart shook as he said in surprise, "Is there an imperishable realm expert here?" "I was just joking. Did you really take it seriously? How can there be an imperishable realm expert in the Nether King Hell?" The blood-eyed leopard sneered. "Damn you, is there any point in playing with me?" The madman was instantly enraged as a wave of blood energy rolled out. In the blink of an eye, a blood-colored domain appeared and covered the entire area. Blood Demon Domain. The Blood Demon Domain could cause the opponent's cultivation to drop by 4 minor realms. However, the blood-eyed leopard's cultivation showed no signs of dropping at all. "What are you doing?" The blood-eyed leopard glanced at the Blood Demon Domain and looked suspiciously at the madman. The madman couldn't help but smile bitterly. As expected, no matter how powerful a deity technique was, as long as it wasn't at the heaven-defying level, it couldn't break through the barrier of major realms. Right now, he was a great success paragon god, and was just a little bit away from perfection paragon god. But even so, the Blood Demon Domain was useless against a half-step 9 heavens realm blood-eyed leopard. How frustrating. If he could use a heaven-defying technique, a mere half-step imperishable realm beast could be killed with a wave of his hand. "Seems like that's all you've got. Boring. This emperor will reward you. Become this emperor's food." The blood-eyed leopard snarled and pounced at the madman. "This is the Nether King Hell?" The madman couldn't help but feel despair. "Beast, die." But at this moment, an old voice sounded. A black-robed old man came from the left like lightning. "It's him." The madman turned around and was shocked. The black-robed old man came aggressively and slapped at the blood-eyed leopard. Roar! The blood-eyed leopard howled as blood splashed across the sky. "Strong," the madman muttered. This black-robed old man was at the great perfection 9th heaven realm. The black-robed old man stopped and looked at the madman. "You're the madman?" "Yes." Madman nodded and bowed. "Greetings, Lord Ancestral Dragon." That was right. This black-robed old man was the ancestral dragon of the Black Dragon clan. Madman never expected that the first person he would meet in the underworld kings, hell, would be Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon. Why are you running around? If I hadn't coincidentally met you, you would already be a corpse. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said furiously. What do you mean? Madman was stunned. Why was this old fellow concerned about him? All right. From now on you will follow me. With your level of cultivation, if no one protects you, you'll definitely die. After Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon finished speaking, he turned around and flew towards the west. Madman glanced at Black Dragon Ancestral Dragon's back and quickly chased after him. He asked suspiciously, How do you know me? It was Yi Zhong who said that. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said. Grand Hall Master? Madman was stunned. That's right. Before entering Hades' hell, he told us dragons to bring you and Li Bu with us if we meet you. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said indifferently. I see. Madman nodded in realization. Look at you guys. You didn't even inquire about the situation in Hades' hell before coming in. Aren't you courting death? If it wasn't for Yi Zhong's face, I wouldn't bother with idiots like you. What about Li Bu? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon asked. I don't know. I'm also puzzled. Madman shook his head. What's there to be puzzled about? The teleportation in Hades' hell is random. Even if you are tied together, you will be separated once you reach Hades' hell. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said. I see. Madman muttered and asked. Then where are we going now? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said. To the gathering place. Gathering place? Madman was stunned. That's right. We dragons have been to Hades' hell many times. And after exploring it time and time again, although we don't know this place like the back of our hand, we still know the basic situation. Therefore, every time before entering Hades' hell, we would first set a gathering place. Everyone, after entering the hell of the King of Hell, we will gather here. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said. I see. Madman nodded in realization. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon glanced at him and said, Quickly refine the evil force in your body. Otherwise it will corrode your soul sooner or later. Evil force. Madman was stunned. It's the blood mist in your body. This blood mist, whether it's us or the natives of Hades' hell, we all call it evil force. And this is one of the biggest threats of Hades' hell. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said. The biggest threat? Madman was stunned and frowned. It can't be. Why do I feel like it doesn't affect me? What? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon immediately stopped in the void and turned around to look at Madman in shock. He wasn't affected. How is that possible? One had to know that this evil force could even corrode an expert like him if he wasn't careful. I feel. What is this evil force? Not only did it not affect me at all, it even gave me an inexplicable sense of intimacy. In fact, I can even absorb the evil energy to strengthen my own cultivation. Madman said. What? Sense of intimacy? I can even absorb it? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon was shocked. Every time Hades' hell opened, he would come in. But he had never heard of such a thing. What kind of monster was this kid? Yi Zhong didn't misjudge him. He was a monster. Madman also frowned. Could it be, it has something to do with the heaven-defying technique I cultivate? Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon's eyes flashed as a smile climbed up his face and asked, Little Madman, are you interested in becoming this Lord's disciple? Madman was stunned. The dignified Ancestral Dragon actually wanted to accept a human as his disciple? If this was heard by others, their jaws would definitely drop. If you become this Lord's disciple, then your status in Divine Land will not be lower than Li Bu, and you can freely enter and exit Divine Dragon Island. You may not know, but my Divine Dragon Island has a very powerful time array. The most important thing is that you can enjoy resources that others can only dream of. Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon said with a smile, full of temptation. But Madman despised him in his heart. How could he not know about Divine Dragon Island's time array? It couldn't be compared to the ancient castle at all. It couldn't even be compared to the time array of the Dragon Slayer Palace. What was there to be proud of? However, this was a chance to get close to the dragons. Let me think about it. Madman hesitated. For this lord to take a fancy to you. That is the accumulated merit of your ancestors. What do you have to think about? Be straightforward, do you agree or not? Ancestral dragon Black Dragon was unhappy. This, Madman looked hesitant. If you don't agree, this lord will abandon you now. This lord wants to see how you can survive here. Ancestral dragon Black Dragon sneered. Alright, this lord, no, I agree. Madman nodded helplessly. That's more like it. Ancestral dragon Black Dragon chuckled and said, this lord has also heard from Yi Zhong that with your character, there is no need to suppress it. Is that so? Then this lord will not be polite. Since I have already acknowledged you as my master, is there any greeting gift? Madman grinned. Ancestral dragon Black Dragon's face suddenly darkened. He was really not polite at all. And then there was the white-eyed wolf. At this moment, the female blood-eyed giant was lying motionless on the ground after being beaten to a pulp. How is it? Do you still dare to be arrogant in front of me? The white-eyed wolf jumped onto the giant's neck and laughed proudly. The giant glared at the white-eyed wolf, but it could not hide the fear in its heart. Don't stare at me like that. I am actually very kind. Come, let's have a good chat. What is the situation in this Nether King Hell? Where are the heaven-defying artifacts and heaven-defying techniques usually hidden? The white-eyed wolf simply sat on the giant's nose and asked curiously, heaven-defying artifact? Heaven-defying technique? The blood-eyed giant was stunned. The white-eyed wolf held his chin and said indifferently, don't say that you don't know. How would I know about such a divine artifact and technique? The red-eyed giant felt wronged. Really? The white-eyed wolf frowned. The red-eyed giant nodded. Then aren't you worthless? The white-eyed wolf said thoughtfully. The red-eyed giant's eyes trembled, and it hurriedly said, but I can tell you something else. The white-eyed wolf thought for a moment and laughed. I didn't expect you to be afraid of death. Then tell me. Situations like Qin Feiyang, the mad scientist, and the white-eyed wolf were happening everywhere in the Nether King Hell. Help! In the sky above a certain mountain, a perfect paragon god in black was crushed by a flaming lion's claw. Whoosh! There was a blood-red river, and a middle-aged perfect divine lord carefully flew towards it. Roar! Suddenly, a huge beast roared out of the river and swallowed the middle-aged man in one gulp. On the shore of a lake, a young man and a young woman were carefully sizing up the lake. They did not know each other. They just happened to descend nearby, so they traveled together and could take care of each other. Their cultivation was not weak. The man was a perfect paragon god, and the woman was a greater paragon god. But suddenly, a blood-eyed giant charged out of the lake. This blood-eyed giant's cultivation was at the greater ninth heaven realm. Outsiders, die! Looking at the two of them, the blood-eyed giant was stunned for a moment. Then it went berserk and stomped at the two of them. Go to the spatial divine item. The woman shouted. The man grabbed the woman, but found that he could not enter the spatial divine item. How could this be? At this moment, the blood-eyed giant's foot landed, and the two were stomped into meat paste. In the sky above a lake, a human at the lesser ninth heaven realm was fighting with a blood-eyed giant, who was also at the lesser ninth heaven realm. This person had mastered a pinnacle-level deity skill and a pinnacle-level deity weapon. He was very confident. However, the blood-eyed giant suddenly took out a giant axe that was dozens of meters long and chopped him into pieces with a single swing of the axe. Both his body and soul were destroyed. Chapter 2577. In short, too many people had died. Many people didn't even have the chance to see the Nether King's Hell before they died at the hands of the blood-eyed giants and the beasts. Those who had the power to protect themselves were at least in the nine heavens realm. Those paragon gods, monarchs, and war gods could only wait for death. But if they encountered the blood-eyed giants and beasts in the nine heavens realm, then even the humans in the nine heavens realm would be doomed. Moreover, not being able to enter the space divine item was also a fatal blow. Many people didn't know this before they came in. Therefore, life-saving things like elixirs were all placed in the space divine item. There were even some people who placed their divine artifacts in spatial divine items. And before entering the Nether King's Hell, they had a plan. For example, the man and woman. So what if they were in danger? As long as they entered the space divine item, it would be no problem to hide. But the reality was cruel. When they really entered the Nether King's hell and encountered danger, they found that they couldn't enter the space divine item. This sudden turn of events was undoubtedly a double blow to their hearts and minds. Those with strong willpower were fine. They would try their best to find a way. As for those with weak willpower, they immediately fell into despair. One had to know. In such a place, once you fell into despair, you would be waiting for death. In less than a day, 1/3 of the people who entered the Nether King's hell had died. Damn it. Why didn't the dragons tell us in advance that we can't enter the space divine item in the Nether King's hell? Isn't this sending us to our deaths? I want to go back. God, can you send me out of the Nether King's hell? I don't want to die. Killing was everywhere. Despair and helplessness shrouded the entire Nether King's hell. But it was too late to regret now. This was a lesson learned in blood. Do not do things that are beyond your ability. On the same day, somewhere in the Nether King's hell, there was a huge ancient city. No city in the Divine Prefecture could compare to the scale of that ancient city. The city covered an area of millions of miles. Every building inside was as tall as a mountain, reaching into the clouds. Even the most ordinary house was a few hundred meters high. Within the city, there were countless red-eyed giants living there. There were men and women, old and young among these red-eyed giants. Just like outside, it was bustling with activity. And in the center of the city stood a particularly tall palace. The palace was pitch black and emitted an ancient aura. Inside the palace, a red-eyed giant that was 100 meters tall was sitting on a throne. His entire body was emitting a terrifying aura. Below them stood a group of giants. These red-eyed giants were all dozens of meters tall, like small mountains. You've all received the news, right? The 100-meter-tall giant glanced at the giant below and asked. His voice was like thunder, deafening to the ears. The giants below nodded in agreement. It's said that other than the divine dragon, there are also many dwarfs. Moreover, there are both good and bad midgets. There are even trash like the war god. This is simply a provocation to our blood demon race. Pass down the order immediately. Hunt them down, including those detestable divine dragons. The 100-meter-tall giant shouted. Yes, the group of giants responded respectfully, then turned and rushed out of the hall. Dragons, damn things. This time, I'll definitely catch all of you in one fell swoop. Let's see if you dare to come to the Netherworld King's hell to snatch our divine items in the future. The 100-meter-tall blood-eyed giant snorted coldly, emitting a bone-piercing murderous aura. Even the dragons knew about it. It was obvious that these giants had fought with the dragons more than once. A hunt was about to begin. However, it was different from the outside world. In the outside world, it was usually humans who hunted other creatures. However, in this world, humans became the prey. This included the dragons. Half a year later, halfway up a giant mountain, a young man in black walked out of a cave abode. He was in high spirits. This person was Qin Feiyang. For the past half a year, he had been refining the blood mist in his body. Just now, he had finally refined the last strand of blood mist. It took him half a year to finish refining it. One could imagine how difficult it was to refine the blood mist. Where should I go next? Qin Feiyang stood at the entrance of the cave abode and scanned the mountains and rivers outside. He had never felt so lost before. He didn't know what to do at all. And after half a year, he didn't know how the lunatic and the white-eyed wolf were doing. Boom! Crack! Suddenly, waves of battle waves came from afar. There's a battle? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He quickly rose into the air and scanned the surroundings. Since there was a battle, there must be someone. But the movement was very small. After Qin Feiyang confirmed it again and again, he finally determined that the movement came from the northeast. Roar! Just as Qin Feiyang was about to fly toward the northeast, a roar suddenly sounded from the mountains below. Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly looked down. He saw a ferocious beast rushing up with its bloody mouth. It was actually a black rat. No, it shouldn't be called a rat. It should be called a rat. Because the rat's body was too big, more than 10 meters long. The pitch-black hair all over its body was like steel needles, emitting a shocking cold light. Moreover, its eyes were also blood-red and full of murderous intent. However, fortunately, the cultivation of this giant rat was only at the consummate level of the immortal god. Even a consummate immortal god dares to pounce on me. You really think I'm a sick cat? Qin Feiyang was very angry. He took a step forward and punched the giant rat. The giant rat immediately let out a painful howl and crashed into the mountains below like a rubber ball. However, Qin Feiyang's face showed a trace of surprise and looked down at his fist. There were a few wounds on his fist, and blood was flowing out. Obviously, he was injured by the giant rat's hair when he punched at it. This made Qin Feiyang feel very incredulous. The hair on the giant rat was so hard that it could hurt his body. One had to know. He was now a consummate immortal god. With the strength of his body, it was enough to crush a consummate immortal god. And this giant rat was only a consummate immortal god. It seems that the ferocious beasts of hell can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Qin Feiyang muttered and ignored the giant rat. He turned around and charged toward the northeast. Dwarf, you hurt me, and you still want to leave? But at this moment, the giant rat angrily rushed into the sky and roared at Qin Feiyang. Dwarf. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He turned to look at the giant rat and frowned. Are you talking about me? Who else is here other than you, dwarf? The giant rat laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. The ferocious beasts of hell were really interesting. The Blood Demon clan has ordered a full-scale hunt for you dwarfs. And you are very unlucky to have met us. The giant rat laughed sinisterly. Blood Demon clan? Qin Feiyang stared blankly. What is this? Wait. Us. Qin Feiyang hurriedly looked at the mountains below. Could there be other giant rats hiding below? Haha. Brothers, come and enjoy the delicious meal. The giant rat suddenly laughed. Boom! At that moment, the ground in all directions began to tremble violently and crack open crazily. Qin Feiyang hurriedly looked over, and his face couldn't help but turn pale. Below them, giant black rats were surging out from the broken ground. Group after group. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feiyang saw hundreds of giant black rats. And their cultivation was all consummate immortal god. There were even many consummate immortal gods. So many? Qin Feiyang was speechless. It seemed that he had encountered a rat nest. Underground, a large number of giant rats surged out. In the end, there were as many as 500 to 600 giant rats surrounding him, densely packed. Qin Feiyang glanced at all the giant rats and asked suspiciously, Can you answer my question first? What exactly is the Blood Demon clan? Hehe. The Blood Demon clan is the ruler of hell. Kill. The greater rat that appeared first laughed and roared fiercely. A group of giant rats immediately pounced on Qin Feiyang, their bloody eyes emitting a bloodthirsty light. In their eyes, Qin Feiyang was a delicacy. Blood Demon clan ruler, Qin Feiyang frowned. They actually ordered to hunt them down. It seemed that many people in hell must have died in the past 6 months. This made him more and more worried about the madman and the white-eyed wolf. Hehe. Aren't you going to resist? But it's useless to resist. The giant rats around were like a tide, incomparably ferocious, and were about to drown Qin Feiyang. Suddenly, a strange invisible force, with Qin Feiyang as the center, rolled out in all directions. Soul destruction technique. It ignored all defenses and directly wiped out the soul. At that moment, the greater rats in all directions fell stiffly to the ground. In just an instant, all the giant rats were wiped out. Qin Feiyang confirmed that the souls of these giant rats had indeed been wiped out, and then he dispersed the soul destruction technique. Immediately, he looked up at the blood-colored sun in the sky. Was hell the third level of the miracle? Where was the fire dragon now? Boom! The battle fluctuations coming from the distance were getting more and more obvious. Obviously, the battle over there was moving towards here. Qin Feiyang collected his thoughts, turned into a stream of light, and rushed over like lightning. Look, it's a human dwarf. Kill him. But on the way, he kept being attacked by beasts. These beasts, without exception, were extremely large in size. Their eyes were blood red, and their killing intent was monstrous. Qin Feiyang killed some, but he didn't continue to fight. because he found that the number of beasts in hell was beyond his imagination, and he couldn't kill them all. But he was lucky that he didn't encounter any beasts in the ninth heaven realm. Finally, he saw the battlefield in front of him. It was a blood-eyed giant. And when he saw the blood-eyed giant's face, his face suddenly froze. It was really a narrow road for enemies. That's right. That was the blood-eyed giant that chased after him half a year ago. Its cultivation was at the half-step ninth heaven realm. Qin Feiyong restrained his aura to the extreme, landed on a mountain peak, stood behind a huge rock, and looked at the opponent of the blood-eyed giant. Immediately, Qin Feiyong's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. This was really a coincidence. The person fighting with the blood-eyed giant was actually Wu Baichuan. But that wasn't right. He remembered that Wu Baichuan's cultivation seemed to be at the peak ninth heaven realm. Why couldn't he take down a blood-eyed giant that was at the half-step ninth heaven realm? Chapter 2578. Not only did he meet the blood-eyed giant, but he also met Wu Baichuan. Qin Feiyong didn't show himself, because he wasn't a match for either the blood-eyed giant or Wu Baichuan. The laws of the Nether Kings, hell made him very passive. But the opportunity was in his hands. Even though Wu Baichuan's cultivation was much higher than his, it wasn't hard to kill him as long as he grasped the right timing. Boom! Crack! The battle between the two was terrifying. Mountains shattered and the ground caved in. None of the nearby beasts dared to get close. Wu Baichuan's cultivation was suppressed to the half-step nine heavens realm. He could have ended the battle quickly, but he suppressed his strength. What was he trying to do? Qin Feiyong was confused. Wu Baichuan also seemed to be in a bad state. He even seemed to be at a disadvantage. Could it be that he's plotting something? Otherwise, why would he suppress his cultivation? He even pretended to be weak. Qin Feiyong didn't dare to act rashly. Just as the mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf had said, although Wu Baichuan was weak in front of him, they were in the Nether King's hell now. Therefore, he couldn't underestimate this person. Roar! The blood-eyed giant kept roaring as blood-red divine power surged around his body. The power of one punch was enough to destroy the earth. Wait! A trace of bewilderment crept onto Qin Feiyong's face. The space around them didn't shatter in such an intense battle? That didn't make sense. One had to know that a battle between experts of this level could easily destroy the earth. Could it be that the space in the Nether King's hell was stronger than the space in the ancient world? Human dwarf, go to hell! At this moment, the crimson-eyed giant threw its head back and roared as it swung its millstone-sized fist towards Wu Baichuan with a destructive aura. Wu Baichuan didn't dodge. He raised his fist and smashed it back. Boom! Two fists, one big and one small, collided with a loud bang. A wave of destructive energy surged out in all directions like a tidal wave. Qin Feiyong saw that the situation was not good. He decisively activated the concealment technique and left the mountain peak. Right after he retreated, the enormous mountain he was on shattered on the spot. Puff! Meanwhile, Wu Baichuan spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying like a bomb. Why are you still hiding your cultivation? Qin Feiyong stood in the void and looked at Wu Baichuan, who was flying away, his brows tightly knitted together. Bang! In the end, Wu Baichuan smashed into a mountain in the distance, and several huge peaks were flattened one after another. The blood-eyed giant stood proudly in the air, its violent aura sweeping across the sky. It glanced at the mountains from afar, then turned and left. In his opinion, Wu Baichuan was already dead. Haha! But suddenly, a burst of laughter rang out. The blood-eyed giant was taken aback. It stopped and turned to look at the mountain again. Swoosh! A bloody figure rushed into the sky. Who else could it be but Wu Baichuan? He's not dead. The blood-eyed giant was instantly filled with rage. Its huge body turned into a stream of light and charged towards Wu Baichuan. You want to kill me? Wu Baichuan smiled in disdain. Wisps of lightning energy emerged from his body. Qin Feiyong was shocked. The lightning energy was black in color, and it was like black snakes slithering in the void. Each wisp contained an aura that could destroy the world. The blood-eyed giant also stopped in the void and stared at the black lightning. There seemed to be a trace of seriousness in his eyes. This was because the lightning energy brought about a great sense of danger to him. With your cultivation level, you're just an ant in my eyes. Do you know why I haven't been serious with you yet? Because I want to see what the blood demon race is capable of. But in the end, you're just a bit stronger and have a stronger body. There's nothing special about you. Wu Baichuan walked towards the blood-eyed giant step by step. He was surrounded by lightning and looked disdainful. He's from the blood demon race? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback as he looked at the blood-eyed giant. He finally understood that Wu Baichuan was testing the blood-eyed giant's strength. After all, the blood demon race was an unknown being, and the blood demon race was the ruler of hell. They would definitely have to fight more blood-eyed giants in the future. There was a saying that was very good. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll win every battle. This was why Wu Baichuan suppressed his cultivation level to the half-step 9th heaven realm and fought with the blood-eyed giant. Because they were at the same level, they could clearly test each other's strength. One had to admit that Wu Baichuan was indeed a very smart person. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile wryly as he thought about his suspicions. He thought that Wu Baichuan was planning something. He had to change his suspicions. Sometimes, he could even scare himself to death. The blood-eyed giant suddenly turned around and flew away. Although it was huge, it was extremely fast. Wu Baichuan was taken aback. Qin Feiyang was also taken aback. This big guy knew how to run. Now you want to run? Wu Baichuan smiled coldly. As he waved his arm, the power of lightning immediately turned into a black wave and rushed towards the blood-eyed giant. Roar! The blood-eyed giant immediately howled as it was drowned by the power of lightning. Every bolt of lightning was like a sharp blade that pierced the bones. Wounds kept appearing on its huge body. Some were so deep that the bones could be seen. For a moment, flesh and blood splattered everywhere in the void. Blood dyed the surroundings red. Black lightning, Qin Feiyang muttered. This lightning was formed by Wu Baichuan's divine power. In other words, Wu Baichuan's divine power was the power of lightning. This was quite rare. Furthermore, he discovered that the power of the black lightning seemed to be even more powerful than the other types of lightning. It seemed that this person could not be underestimated. Roar! The blood-eyed giant roared in pain. Its flesh and blood had almost been crushed by the power of lightning. Even its bones were exposed. Qin Feiyang looked at the bones of the blood-eyed giant and found that the bones all over its body were blood red. The blood demon race. What kind of race was this? In our human world, there is a way to die called dismemberment. Now, I'll let you have a taste of it. Wu Baichuan laughed with a ferocious look on his face. It seemed that torturing others was a pleasure. Qin Feiyang could not help but frown. This was just an ordinary battle. There was no deep hatred between them. Was there a need to torture the other party like this? A dozen breaths later, the blood-eyed giant was almost only a skeleton left. The smile on Wu Baichuan's face became brighter and brighter. Is this all you humans can do? But just when Qin Feiyang and Wu Baichuan thought that the blood-eyed giant was definitely going to die, the blood-eyed giant suddenly stopped screaming and looked at Wu Baichuan. What? This sudden unforeseen event caused the expressions of the two people to involuntarily turn stiff. It still had the strength to speak. No, it was not that it had the strength to speak, but it was not weak at all. That's right. They did not feel the slightest sense of weakness in the blood-eyed giant's voice. Just like the dragons said, you humans are indeed a kind of stupid, ignorant, insignificant, and lowly creatures. Do you really understand the power of the blood demon race? The blood-eyed giant suddenly roared. A terrifying aura suddenly fell from the sky. Qin Feiyang and Wu Baichuan looked at the sky at the same time. They found that the aura came from the blood-red sun in the sky. A bright blood-red light fell from the sun and landed on the blood-eyed giant like lightning. Immediately, the blood-eyed giant, which was almost only a skeleton, quickly grew new flesh. In less than 3 breaths, the blood-eyed giant's injuries were healed. How is this possible? Both Qin Feiyang and Wu Baichuan were dumbfounded. This was too strange. Such serious injuries were healed in less than 3 breaths? As long as the evil sun exists, the blood demon race will not die. The blood-eyed giant took a step forward and stomped on Wu Baichuan's head like a demonic god. Boom! Wu Baichuan was immediately stomped into the ground. The evil sun? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He looked at the blood-red sun suspiciously. Immortal? Are you kidding me? Even an eternal stage powerhouse would not dare to say that he is immortal. Who do you think you are? Wu Baichuan's angry roar came from the ground. Rumble. The ground immediately shook. The blood-eyed giant's huge body also started to shake. The blood-eyed giant was shocked. He continued to stomp on Wu Baichuan. I don't care if you are from the blood demon race. If you anger me, you will die. Wu Baichuan let out a sudden roar, as the cultivation that he had been suppressing finally exploded. Initial stage, phenomenal stage, and complete stage of the 9 heavens. What? The blood-eyed giant was shocked. He was still hiding his power? Boom! When Wu Baichuan's power reached its peak, the blood-eyed giant was immediately sent flying. The foot that was stepping on Wu Baichuan was also smashed to pieces by Wu Baichuan's punch. Wu Baichuan walked out of the ground step by step. His face was extremely dark. He stared at the blood-eyed giant and smiled. Immortal! He rushed in front of the blood-eyed giant and punched the blood-eyed giant's head with black lightning. With a loud crack, the blood-eyed giant's head was immediately smashed. Blood splattered everywhere. Roar! The blood-eyed giant was sent flying again and crashed into a mountain. He held his broken head and howled in pain. Since you can't die, then I will let you have a taste of what it feels like to live a life worse than death. Wu Baichuan laughed sinisterly. He took another step and arrived above the blood-eyed giant. He immediately activated the black lightning and bombarded the blood-eyed giant. The blood-eyed giant howled in pain. He didn't expect Wu Baichuan to still be hiding his power. Does it feel good? Wu Baichuan laughed. Roar! The blood-eyed giant roared again. The evil sun in the sky sent down another beam of blood-red light. Wu Baichuan smiled coldly. The black lightning turned into a waterfall and shot toward the beam of blood-red light. However, the beam of blood-red light penetrated the black lightning and entered the blood-eyed giant's body. What? Wu Baichuan was stunned. Qin Feiyang was also stunned. The black lightning was formed by divine power. How could it not hit the beam of blood-red light from the evil sun? Chapter 2579. With the help of the bloody light, the wounds on the blood-eyed giant's body quickly healed. What the hell is this thing? Wu Baichuan was exasperated. He didn't give the blood-eyed giant any chance to breathe and attacked it with black lightning. Soon, the blood-eyed giant was heavily injured again. The blood-eyed giant summoned the evil sun, and another bloody light fell. Clang! Wu Baichuan waved his hand, and a 3-meter-long halberd slashed toward the blood-red light with a heaven-destroying might. In an instant, the halberd and the bloody light met. However, the same thing happened again. The bloody light ignored the halberd and went straight through. Even a divine weapon can't destroy it. Wu Baichuan's expression froze. He jumped up and punched at the bloody light angrily. But it was still the same. The bloody light went through his body and merged with the blood-eyed giant's body. Why is this happening? Wu Baichuan stood in the air in a daze, his eyes filled with disbelief. Divine power and divine weapons couldn't destroy the bloody light. Even his body couldn't block the bloody light? No. To be exact, the bloody light couldn't be touched. And it was something that nothing could touch. How could such a thing exist in the world? Haha. Do you believe me now? You can't kill me. The blood-eyed giant got up from the ground and looked at Wu Baichuan in the sky and laughed. Can't kill you. Wu Baichuan murmured and looked down at the blood-eyed giant. His eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. There's no living thing in this world that can't be killed. Boom. Wu Baichuan attacked with all his might. The space within a 10,000-mile radius twisted. If I can't kill you, it means that I'm not using enough strength. As Wu Baichuan's words left his mouth, the black lightning energy roared out of his body like a torrent. The blood-eyed giant's pupils constricted, and it turned around to escape. Qin Feiyang glanced at Wu Baichuan, and then at the blood-eyed giant. Escaping meant that the blood-eyed giant was also afraid. Since it was afraid, there was nothing that couldn't be killed. As Wu Baichuan said, he couldn't kill it because he wasn't using enough strength. Once he used all his strength and crushed the blood-eyed giant, no matter how powerful the evil sun was, it wouldn't be able to bring it back to life. Go to hell. Wu Baichuan laughed sinisterly. The black lightning energy immediately covered the sky as it charged towards the blood-eyed giant. The blood-eyed giant was even more panicked. He repeatedly emphasized that he wouldn't die because he wanted to scare Wu Baichuan away. Because when Wu Baichuan revealed his true cultivation, he knew that he was not Wu Baichuan's opponent. Moreover, it was impossible for him to escape from Wu Baichuan's hands. After all the difference of their strength level. But he didn't think giant had the giant had the giant had. Die. That was simply impossible. The evil Sun Chen's giants. If the other party instantly destroyed his soul and body, then even the gods wouldn't be able to save him. The blood-eyed giant tried to escape, but he couldn't escape. He was drowned by the power of lightning and screamed in pain. How dare you hurt the blood demons? Human, you're asking for death. But at this moment, a thunderous roar came from the void in the distance. Wu Baichuan and Qin Feiyang were shocked and hurriedly raised their heads to look. They saw an even taller blood-eyed giant charging towards them like lightning. The blood-eyed giant was a middle-aged man. He was more than 20 meters tall and had a strong body. One could feel his intimidating aura from afar. Most importantly, the aura he emitted was extremely powerful. He was at the perfection 9 heavens realm. Damn it, why is there another one? Wu Baichuan cursed in exasperation. He grabbed the halberd, turned around, and flew away without looking back. A half-ninth heaven state blood-eyed giant was already so difficult to deal with, let alone a peak of the 9th heaven state blood-eyed giant. He wasn't afraid of a real battle. He was confident that he could kill him. But who knew if there were other blood-eyed giants nearby? So he couldn't fight. The giant rushed over and slammed its palm towards the black lightning. Boom! The black lightning was destroyed. The blood-eyed giant that was drowned by the lightning also appeared. Only his divine soul was left. His divine soul was much smaller than the blood-eyed giant's body, but it was still comparable to an adult's. Damn you, human! I won't let you go. The blood-eyed giant's divine soul roared and summoned another beam of crimson light. Qin Feiyang stood in the distance and didn't leave. Luckily he didn't leave. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the chance to see such a shocking scene. The crimson light fell and wrapped around the divine soul. In just 10 seconds, the blood-eyed giant's body was reconstructed. Isn't this too outrageous? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded by what he saw. He was at the half-ninth heaven state after all. But his body was reconstructed in less than 10 seconds. What exactly was this evil sun? Greetings, 10 commanders. The blood-eyed giant knelt in front of the blood-eyed giant after his body was reconstructed and greeted him respectfully. MHM. The 10 commanders nodded and looked in the direction that Wu Baichuan disappeared. He asked, "How many humans did you find?" 2. I met one half a year ago, and another one today. But, the blood-eyed giant lowered his head as he spoke. His face was full of fear. The 10 commanders frowned. Did you let them all escape? MHM. The blood-eyed giant nodded. Trash. Keep looking. The 10 commanders yelled. Yes. The blood-eyed giant answered respectfully. He hurriedly got up and flew in the opposite direction of Wu Baichuan. Obviously, he didn't dare to provoke Wu Baichuan again. The 10 giant commanders, on the other hand, flew directly in the direction where Wu Baichuan had disappeared. 10 commanders. It seems that the blood demon race is just like humans. They have discipline. Qin Feiyang murmured. He glanced at the 10 commanders and was about to turn around and leave. These blood-eyed giants were not people that he could provoke. Unfortunately, he didn't find a chance to kill Wu Baichuan. But now, compared to killing Wu Baichuan, he was more anxious to understand the situation in the Nether King's Hell. All of this was beyond common sense. Imagine? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked down at the mountains and rivers below. There seemed to be a figure flashing through the forest. There was someone else. With a trace of doubt, he silently landed in the forest and scanned the surroundings. Soon, he saw a figure not far in front of him. Wu Baichuan. Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. That was Wu Baichuan's figure. Why did he come back? What did he want to do? Qin Feiyang quietly followed and found that Wu Baichuan was tailing the half-ninth heaven realm blood-eyed giant. You still want to kill him? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Wu Baichuan was very agile. He hid his aura and avoided one beast after another. Gradually, the evil sun set in the west. The Nether King's hell, which was already dark, became even darker. Wu Baichuan was also very patient. He didn't attack the blood-eyed giant for an entire day. Qin Feiyang's concealment technique had already disappeared. Like Wu Baichuan, he hid his aura to the extreme and avoided countless beasts. In the evening, the blood-eyed giant walked and stopped before finally stopping in front of a lake. The water in the lake seemed to be stained with blood and had a demonic atmosphere. The blood-eyed giant looked around and then sat cross-legged by the lake and closed his eyes to cultivate. Wu Baichuan stood behind a big tree and looked at the blood-eyed giant from afar. His eyes flickered. Qin Feiyang stood not far behind Wu Baichuan. He looked at Wu Baichuan's back and then looked at the blood-eyed giant's back. There was a hint of contemplation in his eyes. It wasn't a good idea to continue like this. It was better to find a chance to get close to Wu Baichuan. This way, there was no need to be sneaky. Moreover, with Wu Baichuan's cultivation, following him would save him a lot of trouble. In other words, Wu Baichuan was equivalent to a protective umbrella. After pondering for a while, Qin Feiyang took out an illusory form pill and changed his appearance into an extremely ordinary face. How ordinary was it? Even if he stood at the top of the tower, no one would look at him. Following that, he changed into a set of white clothes and then lay on the ground. Looking at Wu Baichuan's back, he whispered, "Is it Wu Baichuan or Wu Shixiang?" Wu Baichuan was shocked and quickly turned to look at the forest behind him. "It's really you." Qin Feiyang quickly got up and ran towards Wu Baichuan in surprise. "Sho." Wu Baichuan's face changed and hurriedly gestured to Qin Feiyang to keep quiet. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Looking at the blood-eyed giant sitting cross-legged by the lake, he immediately revealed a smile of understanding. Then, he quietly walked in front of Wu Baichuan. Wu Baichuan also glanced at the blood-eyed giant. Seeing that it wasn't alarmed, he couldn't help but feel relieved. Following that, Wu Baichuan then turned around and sized up Qin Feiyang. He frowned slightly and thought to himself, "Who are you? Do I know you?" "You definitely don't know me, but I know you. You are a famous monstrous genius in the Dragon God Palace." Qin Feiyang said with a face full of admiration, as if he had seen his idol. Wu Baichuan was startled and sent a sound transmission. "You are also from the Dragon God Palace?" Yes. This is my identity badge." Qin Feiyang took out the order badge, waved it in front of Wu Baichuan, and then kept it. The identity badge of the Eastern, Western, Northern, and Southern Dragon God Palace were all the same. On the token, there was the symbol of the Dragon God Palace, as well as the name. Just now, Qin Feiyang had shown Wu Baichuan one side of the symbol. As for the name on the other side, he definitely could not let Wu Baichuan see it, because Wu Baichuan knew that Li Bu'er was him. And now, facing the blood-eyed giant, he believed that Wu Baichuan would not care about the name on the other side of the order badge. As long as he could prove that he was from the Dragon God Palace, it would be fine. As expected, Wu Baichuan did not look at the name on the other side, and sized up Qin Feiyang for a while, then sent a sound transmission. "When did you discover me?" "Just now. I unintentionally passed by here and saw a back figure. Thus, I carefully observed and realized that it was actually you, senior brother. The heavens will always leave a way out. Senior brother, for the sake of being from the same sect, you must help me. This place is too dangerous. I almost died under the claws of those damned beasts several times." Qin Feiyang scanned his surroundings with a fearful expression. Then, he looked at Wu Baichuan with a pleading gaze. Chapter 2580. Wu Baichuan's eyes were full of disdain when he heard this. Don't come if you're not strong enough. You're right, senior brother. But it's useless to regret now. Qin Feiyang's face was bitter. The disdain on Wu Baichuan's face was even stronger. He thought to himself, how do you want me to help you? Qin Feiyang hurriedly said, let me stay by your side, senior brother. Why? Wu Baichuan couldn't help but want to laugh. But he didn't dare to because of the blood-eyed giant. I know that with your strength, I can't help you at all, and I'll definitely drag you down. But I'll be very obedient. As long as senior brother allows me to stay, I'll do whatever you want me to do, Qin Feiyang said. At least you know your own strength. Wu Baichuan smiled proudly and thought to himself, I'll do anything, right? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Okay. Wu Baichuan nodded, looked at the shoes and said jokingly, my shoes are a little dirty. Wipe them clean for me. Qin Feiyang's face suddenly froze. Why? You don't even know how to wipe shoes. Wu Baichuan looked at Qin Feiyang playfully. Yes, but Qin Feiyang looked hesitant. However, a murderous intent surged in his heart. He even wanted to humiliate him. But what? Didn't you say that you'll do whatever I ask you to do? But now you can't even wipe shoes. How do you want me to trust you? Since I can't trust you, do you think I dare to keep you by my side? Wu Baichuan smiled mockingly. Qin Feiyang's murderous intent became stronger. But suddenly a light flashed in his eyes and he said with a smile, senior brother, how can such a small thing test a person? Then tell me, what is the best way to test him? Wu Baichuan transmitted his voice. Qin Feiyang said, senior martial brother, you have to think about it yourself. Wu Baichuan's eyes flashed. He turned to the blood-eyed giant and said, go and kick him. What? Qin Feiyang's face turned pale in an instant. Wu Baichuan said, if you dare to kick him, I'll let you stay by my side. Qin Feiyang said, but he. Before Qin Feiyang could say anything, Wu Baichuan shook his head and said to himself, there's no room for negotiation. Qin Feiyang struggled for a moment, then nodded and said, okay, I'll go. Ugh. Wu Baichuan was stunned. Was he really going? But he didn't stop him. He crossed his arms and looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and floated in the air. He restrained his aura to the extreme and carefully flew toward the blood-eyed giant. But in his heart he wasn't very nervous. This blood-eyed giant was very powerful. But it wasn't that easy to kill him. But he was thinking, why did Wu Baichuan ask him to kick this blood-eyed giant? You've got guts. But the people of the Dragon God Palace have nothing to do with me. I'm the young lord of the Dragon Slayer Palace. Wu Baichuan sneered in his heart. He pulled out the sky halberd and placed it on the blood-eyed giant's head. He shouted, shut up or I'll destroy you. It's you. Although the blood-eyed giant's back was facing Wu Baichuan, it could hear Wu Baichuan's voice, and its eyes flashed fiercely. That's right. It's me. You didn't expect me to follow you, did you? Wu Baichuan sneered. The blood-eyed giant clenched its fists and looked at the darkening sky. Stop looking. The evil sun has gone down the mountain. Let's see how you can repair your sea of qi without the evil sun, Wu Baichuan said. Hearing this, the blood-eyed giant's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. But neither Qin Feiyang nor Wu Baichuan saw this mockery. Qin Feiyang ran out of the lake and kicked the blood-eyed giant. Then, he ran in front of Wu Baichuan and asked suspiciously, Wu Shixiang, is this giant very strong? Even you have to sneak attack him? Strong? Do you know how to talk? I'm at the peak stage of the 9 heavens state. Do I need to sneak attack him? Wu Baichuan said angrily. Then why did you ask me to attract his attention and sneak attack him? Qin Feiyang frowned. What do you know? I asked you to kick him not to attract his attention, but to see if there are other giants nearby. With his half-step 9 heavens realm cultivation, I can kill him with a wave of my hand. Wu Baichuan snorted. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded. This person was quite cautious in doing things. Wait. Qin Feiyang frowned again. He looked at Wu Baichuan and said, Then aren't you using me as bait? You have a problem with that? Wu Baichuan sneered. I wouldn't dare. Qin Feiyang quickly shook his head and asked with a smile. How did I do? Can you let me stay with you? You did well. Just stay for now. But you have to listen to me, Wu Baichuan said calmly. Okay. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. He then looked at the blood-eyed giant and asked, Senior brother, why didn't you just kill him? Shut up. Wu Baichuan frowned. Qin Feiyang shut his mouth. Wu Baichuan looked at the blood-eyed giant and said, Now, you have to answer my questions honestly. Otherwise, I'll destroy your divine soul. The blood-eyed giant looked at the dark sky, and the mockery in his eyes became thicker. However, his body trembled and he said, Go ahead. What is the evil sun? It can even reconstruct your body so quickly. Wu Baichuan asked. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He knew that the blood-eyed giant had reconstructed his body. It seemed that when the blood-eyed giant was reconstructing its body, Wu Baichuan had already killed his way back. It was just that he was hiding in the dark, and no one had discovered him. The evil sun is formed by the power of evil. All the living beings in hell rely on it to survive. Even our cultivation is related to the evil sun. To the blood demon race, the evil sun is more important. It's a sacred item, because we can summon the power of evil to heal our injuries. As for the effect, you've seen it. It's much better than the pills in your world. The blood-eyed giant said with disdain. Although it was unpleasant, Qin Feiyang and Wu Baichuan couldn't refute it, because it was indeed better than pills. No, not only was it powerful, but in terms of healing effects, medicinal pills simply could not compare to this evil energy. Wu Baichuan asked, Can we summon the evil sun? Didn't you hear what I said? Only the blood demon race can summon the evil sun. Even the other races in hell can't, let alone outsiders like you. The blood-eyed giant sneered. Wu Baichuan said, How many people are there in the blood demon race? I don't know either. The blood-eyed giant shook his head. Qin Feiyang said suspiciously, Aren't you from the blood demon race? Why don't you know? Because there are too many. It's hard to count. There's an ancient city nearby. You can go and take a look. There are 50 to 60,000 blood demons in this city alone. The blood-eyed giant said. What? There's a city here? Qin Feiyang and Wu Baichuan were surprised. That's right. The blood-eyed giant nodded and looked up at the night sky. He smiled and said, But you won't have a chance to go. A crescent moon rose in the night sky. The crescent moon was also blood red and had a demonic aura. No chance. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang and Wu Baichuan looked at each other and looked at the blood-eyed giant suspiciously. Before you came to hell, didn't you ask the dragons about the blood demon race? The blood-eyed giant grinned. The mockery that had been permeating the bottom of his eyes could no longer be concealed. Chapter 2581. Qin Feiyang and the other man's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. They felt an uneasy premonition. The blood demon tribe is even scarier at night. The blood-eyed giant smiled. He looked up at the blood moon and roared. A violent aura surged out of the blood-eyed giant's body, like a tidal wave. Then, a shocking scene appeared. The blood-eyed giant's body started to swell. Furthermore, red hair was growing all over his body. At a glance, he resembled a mutated red-furred gorilla. But this was not the main point. The main point was that the aura of the blood-eyed giant became stronger as his body changed. Initial ninth heaven stage. Initial ninth heaven stage. That's right. This was the change in his cultivation. How could this be? Wu Baichuan was shocked. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Roar. The blood-eyed giant kept roaring at the blood moon in the sky. His body was expanding crazily. His body, which was originally a dozen meters tall, had expanded to 50 or 60 meters. His aura had also soared to the greater ninth heaven stage. Kill him, Qin Feiyang shouted. He wondered how powerful the crimson-eyed giant would become if he allowed it to continue developing like this. I know what to do. I don't need you to remind me. Wu Baichuan glared at Qin Feiyang. He waved the halberd in his hand and slashed at the blood-eyed giant's head. The sharpness destroyed everything in all directions. This halberd was a legendary divine weapon. It was extremely powerful. However, the blood-eyed giant suddenly turned around and grabbed the halberd with his bare hands. The blade was sharp. The blood-eyed giant's hand was torn apart. But the blood-eyed giant did not let go. His blood-red eyes emitted a murderous aura. Die! Wu Baichuan shouted. The sky halberd's sharpness suddenly increased. Crack! The blood-eyed giant's entire arm shattered. That enormous body was sent flying by the halberd's aura. With a bang, it fell into the lake. However, the blood-eyed giant's aura became more and more terrifying. Boom! All of a sudden, the blood-eyed giant's aura soared to the peak ninth heaven stage. Roar! With a deafening roar, the blood-eyed giant rushed out of the lake and appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and Qin Feiyang. Looking at the blood-eyed giant, the two were stunned. At this moment, the blood-eyed giant had changed. Both the blood-eyed giant's body and face were covered in red hair. His two blood-red eyeballs looked like they were made of blood. And its body was 100 meters tall blood-eyed giant. At first glance, he looked like a red-furred demon with overflowing evil energy. What's going on? Qin Feiyang and Qin Feiyang were in disbelief. Although the blood-eyed giant was the blood-eyed giant, but now, how could he still look like a human? It was a complete monster. Die, all of you! The blood-eyed giant's laughter was as deafening as thunder. It raised its other arm and smashed towards the two of them. Qin Feiyang saw that the situation was not good and retreated like lightning. Humph! However, Wu Baichuan brandished his Fengtian halberd, not dodging at all. Clang! The fist and the sky halberd met. The blood-eyed giant's fist was smashed into pieces. However, the sky halberd in Wu Baichuan's hand was also shaken out of his hand by the blood-eyed giant's terrifying power. Even his arm, which was holding the sky halberd, was bleeding. He kept retreating. Qin Feiyang hurried forward to support Wu Baichuan and asked, "Senior brother, are you okay?" Wu Baichuan forced Qin Feiyang to retreat and stared at the blood-eyed giant. "Human, do you know how powerful the blood demon tribe is? Once the evil moon rises, all living things in the world will have to submit to the blood demon clan. The blood demon tribe is the king of the night." The blood-eyed giant roared. Suddenly, a ray of blood light fell from the blood moon in the sky and entered the blood-eyed giant's body. Immediately, the arm that was smashed by the sky halberd and the other arm that was injured just now were instantly repaired. He wasn't hallucinating. It happened in an instant. It was unbelievable. This recovery ability was even more terrifying than the evil sun during the day. Hee. The blood demon tribe is not something that you dwarfs can offend. The blood-eyed giant stomped towards the two of them. The violent aura was earth-shattering, destroying everything around it. Qin Feiyang retreated again. Clang! Wu Baichuan waved his hand, and the sky halberd landed in front of Wu Baichuan like a ray of light. "You dare to call yourself an emperor in front of me? It seems that you've really become arrogant." As Wu Baichuan's voice fell, the sky halberd fully recovered. Boom! A giant golden python roared as it shot out. This was the phenomenon of the sky halberd fully recovering. The aura it emitted was many times stronger than before. "You're only at the peak 9 heaven state. Killing you is as easy as slaughtering a dog." Wu Baichuan grabbed the sky halberd and charged forward with a gloomy face. Roar! Clang! Rumble! The two of them immediately clashed, and a destructive aura spread in all directions. Qin Feiyang retreated again and again. He was extremely shocked. One had to know. Wu Baichuan was not only at the peak 9 heaven state, but the sky halberd was also a legendary divine artifact. With such strength, he was almost invincible in the same realm. However, at this moment, the blood-eyed giant was evenly matched with Wu Baichuan with the strength of a peak 9 heaven state. He even used his physical body to fight against a legendary divine artifact. The mutated blood-eyed giant was much stronger than before, be it in terms of cultivation, physical strength, or strength. It could be said that the blood-eyed giant's physical body was so strong that even Qin Feiyang felt inferior. The most important thing was, no matter how serious the injuries the blood-eyed giant suffered, it could instantly recover with the help of the evil moon. This was simply an immortal body. Evil moon! Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the blood moon in the sky, his eyes full of suspicion. The evil sun was formed by the power of evil. Then what about this evil moon? Suddenly, a scream woke Qin Feiyang up. Qin Feiyang hurriedly looked over and immediately turned pale with fright. Wu Baichuan was sent flying by the blood-eyed giant. His body cracked and blood flowed out. He was no match for it. "This is impossible." Wu Baichuan himself was also extremely shocked. With the cultivation of a peak 9 heaven state and a legendary divine artifact, he couldn't beat a peak 9 heaven state? Hee. The Blood-Eye Giant's injuries were even more serious than Wu Baichuan's. But with the help of the evil moon, he instantly recovered. With a grin, the Blood-Eye Giant stretched out his arm. That huge palm seemed to be able to cover the sky, and the moon as it grabbed Wu Baichuan in his hand. His 5 fingers rapidly tightened. Wu Baichuan's body suddenly spat out blood, and his entire body twisted. He couldn't help but scream in pain. The bones in his body were broken one by one and shattered. Killing you is as easy as killing an ant. The Blood-Eye Giant laughed. There was a bloodthirsty light in his eyes. Senior brother. Qin Feiyang looked at Wu Baichuan anxiously. But in his heart he was thinking, isn't this guy too useless? With such a powerful cultivation, he couldn't even deal with the peak 9 heaven state. It seemed that this protection was a bit unreliable. It was good that he died, so he wouldn't have to do it in the future. Seeing that Wu Baichuan's body was about to be crushed, a terrifying aura suddenly surged out. The Blood-Eye Giant's hand was instantly shattered. This aura. Qin Feiyang looked at the sky halberd in Wu Baichuan's hand. That's right. This aura that suddenly appeared came from the sky halberd. And this aura was about to surpass the level of a legendary divine artifact. Wu Baichuan took a divine life pill and looked up at the Blood-Eye Giant. His face was unprecedentedly calm. This should be all of your strength, right? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Could it be that this person had been testing the Blood-Eye Giant all this time? The Blood-Eye Giant also stared at Wu Baichuan in shock. The Blood Demon race is indeed a terrifying race. If it was another peak 9 heaven state, they would definitely die in your hands today. But unfortunately, you're unlucky to have met me. Remember my name. My name is Wu Baichuan. Wu Baichuan smiled coldly. The sky halberd in his hand immediately emitted a powerful aura with a loud clang. This is a supreme-level divine artifact. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. With a supreme-level divine artifact, he could naturally tell. That's right. Today, even if we have to ascend to the heavens or descend to the earth, we will slaughter you all. The man roared. His speed also increased by a large margin in an instant. His speed has also increased by so much? Wu Baichuan was slightly taken aback. He hurriedly used an auxiliary technique, and his speed increased several times. In the blink of an eye, he got rid of the 2 Blood-Eye Giants. Bastards, I won't let you go. The 2 giants stopped in the void and roared. On a mountaintop, Wu Baichuan bent over, panting like a cow. At the side, Qin Feiyang's face was also filled with fear. Senior brother, what should we do? Qin Feiyang looked at Wu Baichuan in a daze. Wu Baichuan let out a long breath, glanced around at the night sky, and said in a deep voice, let's find a place to refine the evil power in our bodies and come out after dawn. Qin Feiyang nodded. This was indeed a wise move, because the blood demon race at night was countless times more terrifying than during the day. If they continued to wander outside, they might encounter some danger. As for during the day, although the blood demon race could also borrow the power of the evil sun, they were not that difficult to deal with. The 2 of them found a nearby place and opened up a cave. Wu Baichuan used his divine power to seal the cave dwelling. He then took out a wine jar and gulped down a large mouthful. He raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said, that's right, I still haven't asked what your name is. Isan. Qin Feiyang said. Do you want to drink? Wu Baichuan shook the wine jar. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said hesitantly, it's not appropriate to drink at this time. We're not drunk. What are you afraid of? Forget it if you don't want to drink. Wu Baichuan took another big gulp, put down the wine jar, sat cross-legged on the ground, and closed his eyes to meditate. Qin Feiyang glanced at Wu Baichuan, and also sat cross-legged to check the situation in his body. He found that there was a lot of blood mist in his body after a day. It seemed that even if he didn't actively absorb it, the blood mist in the hell of the Nether King would automatically enter his body. And it would do it all the time. In other words, every once in a while, they had to hide and refine the blood mist in their body. If they didn't refine the blood mist, they would definitely be threatened. Wait. Qin Feiyang was suddenly stunned. He looked up at Wu Baichuan and asked carefully, "Senior brother, can I ask you a question?" "Speak." Wu Baichuan didn't open his eyes. Qin Feiyang said, "Is the blood mist in our body the evil power?" "That's right. This is the evil power. Although the evil power in the hell of the Nether King can't be compared to the evil power in the bloody channel we passed through when we came in, it can still pose a great threat to us. Because this evil power is everywhere. My suggestion is that it's best to refine it once a day. Otherwise, when this evil power corrodes your divine soul, even if a god descends to the mortal world, he won't be able to reverse the situation." Wu Baichuan said, "So this is the so-called evil power." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Don't disturb me if there's nothing," Wu Baichuan said coldly and then fell silent. Qin Feiyang also tactfully shut his mouth and began to refine the evil power in his body. But in his heart, he was a little puzzled. This evil power could cause great harm to them. But to the blood demon race, it was equivalent to a sacred object. What kind of creature was this blood demon race to be able to absorb the evil power? At the same time, two figures cut through the night sky like lightning and rushed into a mountain. It was an old man and a young man. The old man was wearing a black robe and was filled with a murderous aura. The young man was wearing black and had an extraordinary temperament. That's right. These two people were the Black Dragon Ancestral Gregon and Frenzy. "Old man, where is this?" Madman looked at the mountain suspiciously. Old man, are you addicted to calling me old man? Don't you know how to respect your teacher?" Ancestral Gregon glared at him. "This is my nature. Besides, didn't you tell me not to suppress my personality?" Madman was dissatisfied. Ancestral Gregon's face darkened, and he couldn't be bothered to argue with him. "This is the gathering place we agreed on in advance, the Giant Dragon Mountain Range." Madman was slightly taken aback, and a trace of curiosity appeared in his eyes. Looking down from the sky, the mountain ridges did indeed look like giant dragons. About 10 breaths later, the two went deep into the heart of the Giant Dragon Mountain Range. There was a huge canyon ahead. Before they got close, Madman sensed a familiar aura. Whoosh! At the same time, an old figure rushed out of the canyon. It was an old man with white hair and a white beard, looking like an immortal. "Yi Zhong." Ancestral Gregon waved his hand. That's right. The old man was Qin Feiyang's cheap teacher Yi Zhong. Yi Zhong went up and looked at Madman. A trace of anger flashed in his eyes. Then he looked at Ancestral Gregon and smiled. "You're finally here." Ancestral Gregon looked at the canyon and asked, "Is everyone here?" Yi Zhong said, "Except for Her Highness and Old Hua. Everyone else is here." And the Old Hua he mentioned was naturally the fire dragon, Ancestral Gregon. "What? The princess is here too?" Madman was surprised. "You don't know?" Yi Zhong looked at him suspiciously. Madman shook his head. Ancestral Gregon said, "I didn't tell him." Yi Zhong nodded and asked, "How did you meet?" "This kid is lucky. I bumped into him not long after he came in. Otherwise he would have become a pile of corpses." Ancestral Gregon snorted. Madman smiled embarrassedly. Yi Zhong stared at Madman and asked, "Then did you see Li Buer?" "No." Ancestral Gregon shook his head. Yi Zhong's face darkened as he cursed. That little bastard is really worrisome. But between his brows, it was obvious that he was worried about Qin Feiyang. That, heaven helps the worthy. He should be fine. Madman said, "Shut up. I'll let you off for now. When I find Li Buer, I'll deal with him together." Yi Zhong said angrily. Madman shrunk his neck and hid behind Ancestral Gregon. Cough cough. "Old Yi, if you want to deal with him now, you have to get my permission first." Ancestral Gregon coughed and said. Yi Zhong was stunned and looked at Ancestral Gregon suspiciously. "What do you mean? He is now my disciple." Ancestral Gregon said. "What?" Yi Zhong was stunned. The Ancestral Gregon actually took in a disciple, and a human at that? "Old Black, do you have a fever?" Yi Zhong stretched out his hand and touched Ancestral Gregon's forehead. "Go away." Ancestral Gregon slapped away Yi Zhong's hand and glared at Yi Zhong. "I'm just taking in a disciple. What's there to be surprised about?" With that, he rushed down the canyon. Yi Zhong looked at Ancestral Gragon's back and turned to Madman. He frowned and said, "Kid, did you feed Old Black some kind of bewitching potion?" "Bewitching potion? I need to be capable too." Madman was speechless. "Don't think that you can escape punishment just because you're Old Black's disciple. When I find that bastardly Bu'er, see how I'll deal with you." Yi Zhong snorted and returned to the canyon. Madman smiled bitterly and looked up at the night sky. He muttered, "Nothing must happen to you guys." To be honest, he was also worried about Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. Let's not talk about the white-eyed wolf first, because he didn't know much about the white-eyed wolf. As for Qin Feiyang, he knew everything about him. Although Qin Feiyang had many tricks up his sleeve and was very shrewd, this was Nether King Hell. Because of the rules of Nether King Hell, Qin Feiyang's tricks were restricted. If he wasn't careful, something would happen. As a friend, he really didn't want anything to happen to Qin Feiyang. And if something happened to Qin Feiyang, then Fire Lotus and the others in the castle and Black Tortoise world would be trapped in Nether King Hell forever. In other words, Qin Feiyang's safety was related to the fate of everyone in Black Tortoise world. Chapter 2583. Inside the canyon. When Madman entered the canyon, he found that there were 10 other people in addition to Yi Zhong. 8 of them were the 8 ancestral dragons, including the white-clothed woman. The other 2 were a woman and a young man. The woman was shrouded in mist, and it was difficult to see her face. When Madman saw this woman, he frowned, because this woman was the chief pavilion master of the treasure pavilion. She was also in the gathering place. It seemed that she was planning to hide under the protection of the dragons like him and Qin Feiyang. "Just wait. You will cry sooner or later." The madman secretly smiled and looked at the young man. The young man was about 25 or 26 years old. He was tall and had an imposing appearance. 2 thick black eyebrows emitted a threatening aura. His cultivation was also at the peak of the 9th heaven realm. Madman realized that he had never seen this person before. The blood-red clothed youth said unhappily, "Old Black, you are too slow." "Can't help it. The place where we descended this time is too far from here." Ancestral Dragon shook his head. "Right now only Old Fire, the princess, and Libur haven't arrived. Old Fire and the princess are fine because they know the gathering place. But Libur," the white-clothed woman said and turned to look at Yi Zhong. "Don't worry about him. He asked for it." Yi Zhong said expressionlessly, "Old man, you say that, but in your heart, you are worried to death." The white-clothed woman sneered. "Who is worried about him?" Yi Zhong snorted. "Stubborn duck. However, when I was in the Dragon God Palace, I learned a lot about this disciple of yours. This kid is quite capable. I believe that even if he doesn't know the gathering place, he should be able to survive." The white-clothed woman smiled. "Capable?" The chief pavilion master couldn't help but sneer in his heart. So what if he was capable? This wasn't any other place, it was the Nether King's Hell. Qin Feiyang's cultivation determined everything. It was harder than ascending to the heavens to survive here. But this was good too. It saved her the trouble of fighting the Beast Emperor. "Wait a moment. The dragons only sent you guys." Madman looked at the ancestral dragons and said in shock. The blood-red clothed youth shouted, "Shut up. Do you have the right to speak here?" Cough cough. "Give me some face. After all, he is my disciple now." Ancestral Dragon Black Dragon coughed dryly. "What? Disciple?" When the ancestral dragons heard this, they had the same reaction as Yi Zhong. Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon smiled faintly. He looked at Madman and explained, "You have seen how dangerous hell is. Having more people might not be a good thing." "You're right." Madman nodded. The more people there were, the more sacrifices there would be. Not only are there blood demons, but there are also countless beasts. Yi Zhong said. Then, since we can't use heaven-defying divine artifacts and techniques in the Underworld King's Hell, these divine artifacts and techniques should be useless to the blood demon race. Then why don't we discuss with them, and use some things that the Underworld King's Hell doesn't have to exchange for those divine artifacts and techniques? Madman said. If even you can think of it, how can we not? Yi Zhong smiled bitterly. Madman looked at him in confusion. We have already tried, but the blood demon race doesn't fall for it. Because in their eyes we are invaders, robbers, and provoking their dignity as the rulers of the underworld king's hell. Yizhong said. Then it's really not easy, Madman muttered. Don't worry about this. We will handle it. You just stay here and recuperate. Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon looked at Madman and said before looking at Yizhong. Since Old Fire and Her Highness aren't here yet, why don't we make another trip to the ancient city? Sure. Yizhong pondered for a while and nodded. Then, Yizhong looked at the blood-robed youth and the others and reminded, be careful. The blood demon race has already made their move. They might find this place. Everyone nodded. Swoosh! Yizhong and Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon immediately soared into the sky and flew out of the mountain range. Madman looked at the chief pavilion master and the others before sitting cross-legged and closing his eyes to cultivate. In the past half a year, he discovered a very magical phenomenon. Not only could he absorb the evil force to cultivate, but he could also achieve twice the results with half the effort. He was not the only one who was puzzled. Even the Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon was puzzled. Old Black, why do you want to accept Madman as your disciple on a whim? Above the mountain range, Yizhong looked at Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon suspiciously. It's not a whim. Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon shook his head. What do you mean? Yizhong was puzzled. You don't know. This kid can actually absorb the evil force to cultivate. Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon said. It can't be. Yizhong stopped, and his face was filled with shock. It's true. Moreover, he absorbs the evil force at a faster speed than when he cultivates. Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon said. How could there be such a thing? Yizhong frowned. I don't know either. Even he doesn't know what's going on. That's why I accepted him as my disciple. Perhaps this ability of his can help us in Fallen Valley. Black Dragon Ancestral Gragon said. Fallen Valley? Yizhong was shocked and said. You want to enter Fallen Valley? That's right. I've come to Hell so many times, but I've never really entered Fallen Valley. This time, I must go and take a look. At this time he was still thinking about eating? Don't misunderstand. I'm just a little curious. Is there any evil force in the flesh and blood of these beasts? Wu Baichuan transmitted his voice. Is there a need to think about it? Beasts that grow up in such a place must have evil force, Qin Feiyang said secretly. Wu Baichuan immediately glared at Qin Feiyang and said to himself, I've discovered that you like to undermine people's efforts. No. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Do you think you're very smart? Wu Baichuan stared at him coldly. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Wu Baichuan secretly snorted. Since you're following me, you have to be sensible. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded repeatedly. Seeing that Qin Feiyang's attitude was still acceptable, Wu Baichuan's expression eased a lot. He looked at the blood rabbit again. That blood rabbit was eating meat. That's right. It was eating meat. Moreover, he was gnawing on a whole beast with relish. This is the first time I've seen a rabbit eating meat, Qin Feiyang muttered. There are all kinds of strange things in this world. What's there to be curious about? I thought you were very smart. It turns out that your IQ is only SOSO. Wu Baichuan despised him. Qin Feiyang was stunned. This guy's desire for revenge was too strong. Wu Baichuan observed for a while, and found that this blood rabbit only had the cultivation of a paragon, and there were no other beasts nearby. Immediately, he rushed out like an arrow and slapped the rabbit's head with his palm. The blood rabbit was shocked. It didn't even look and turned to flee. Qin Feiyang finally saw what a frightened rabbit was. That was called running away quickly. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. Want to run? Wu Baichuan was also stunned. A trace of anger flashed in his eyes, and he immediately chased after it. Qin Feiyang didn't chase after it. He walked to the corpse of the beast that was eaten by the blood rabbit, and carefully observed it. Soon he found out. The flesh and blood of these ferocious beasts indeed contain the power of evil. In other words, in this hell, not only the blood demon clan, Other creatures also relied on absorbing evil power to survive. But why were these living beings able to absorb the power of evil? Boom. At this time, in the forest ahead, there were fluctuations of battle. Soon, Wu Baichuan dragged the blood rabbit back. That blood rabbit was already on the verge of death. Its blood-red eyes were filled with fear. Qin Feiyang went up and smiled in admiration. Senior brother, you have a good method. It's just a paragon. What's there to praise? Although he said those words, Wu Baichuan's face was filled with pride. He enjoyed this kind of flattery. Wu Baichuan lowered his head to look at the blood rabbit and asked, "Do you want to live?" "Yes." The blood rabbit nodded like it was pounding garlic. Chapter 2585. That city covered an area of about hundreds of thousands of miles. Ancient buildings towered into the sky. The four walls were also dozens of meters high, like a black python. In the city, giants could be faintly seen walking. The blood rabbit stopped at the top of a mountain. Seeing that there were no ferocious beasts nearby paying attention to this side, it whispered, "Come out quickly." Qin Feiyang and Li Wuyo rushed out of the fur and landed on the cliff in front of the blood rabbit, looking at the ancient city. Seeing the ancient city occupied by the blood demons, both of them were deeply shocked. They had never seen such a tall and majestic city. It was really an eye-opener. The blood rabbit looked at the backs of the two and slowly retreated. The corners of Wu Baichuan's mouth lifted. He turned around and slapped the blood rabbit's head. The blood rabbit immediately let out a miserable howl and was destroyed. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Wu Baichuan said, "We definitely can't keep it. Otherwise, when it notifies the blood demons, we will be doomed." "That makes sense." Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the ancient city again. He asked, "How are we going to get in?" "Of course, we're going to kill our way in. There must be a lot of divine objects in this ancient city. Let's snatch these divine objects and leave." Wu Baichuan smiled coldly. "Are you sure you can beat the 50,000 to 60,000 blood demons in the city with your strength?" Qin Feiyang frowned. To put it nicely, he was courageous and insightful. To put it bluntly, he was bold but not astute. One had to know. This was also the nest of the blood demons. Wouldn't it be like a sheep walking into a tiger's den and walking into a trap? What can you do if you're so cowardly? If you don't dare to go, just stay here. But don't even think about taking any of the divine objects that I get later." Wu Baichuan sneered. "Senior brother, this is not about the divine objects. We'd better find out the situation of the ancient city first." Qin Feiyang said. "You talk too much nonsense." Wu Baichuan glared at him. He took out his Fangtian halberd and rushed towards the ancient city. "I really overestimated you," Qin Feiyang muttered to himself as he looked at Wu Baichuan's back. There should be a limit to arrogance. Very soon, Wu Baichuan rushed to the city gate. There were two giants guarding the two sides of the city gate. Their cultivations were both at the half-step 9 heavens realm. Above the city gate, there were 4 big words. The mysterious heaven ancient city. Human. Wu Baichuan did not conceal his aura. Thus, the moment he appeared, the two giants in front of the city gate discovered him. Boom! Immediately, the two giants soared into the air, waving their huge fists, smashing towards Wu Baichuan. "Die!" Wu Baichuan coldly laughed. His ancient halberd instantly awakened, and a gigantic python roared as it shot forth. Along with a loud bang, the two giants were crushed into pieces and their blood dyed the sky red. "What's going on? It's a human. How dare you come to our mysterious heaven ancient city? You really don't know what's good for you." The blood demons in the city were immediately alarmed. They all soared into the sky and charged towards Wu Baichuan. "I know the power of the blood demons like the back of my hand. Killing you will be easier than killing dogs." Wu Baichuan smiled coldly. He held the Fangtian halberd in his hand and charged into the city like a god of war, leaving corpses all over the ground. He's indeed powerful. Qin Feiyang stood at the top of the mountain and watched this scene with a glint in his eyes. The powerful he was referring to was not Wu Baichuan's power, but the Fangtian halberd, a supreme divine artifact. With a supreme divine artifact, as long as he did not encounter any blood demons at the peak 9 heavens realm, As long as it was not at night, Wu Baichuan could basically defeat them. However, was there really no blood demons at the Peak Nine Heavens realm in such a big city? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked at the city wall, the city gate, and the buildings in the city with a trace of surprise in his eyes. Wu Baichuan held the Fangtian halberd in his hand and was invincible. However, even if Wu Baichuan attacked unscrupulously in the city, there was no trace of damage. Something was wrong. How could a mere ancient city withstand the battle of such an overlord? Qin Feiyang jumped down from the top of the mountain, restrained his aura, and went in another direction, approaching the ancient city. The city wall emitted a cold aura. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and pressed it on the city wall. His eyes suddenly trembled. This was not an ordinary city. It was a divine artifact. Because he sensed the aura of a divine artifact. Immediately, Qin Feiyang retracted his arm and turned to rush into the forest outside the city. Since the mysterious sky ancient city was a divine artifact, it must have an artifact spirit. If there was an artifact spirit, it would definitely discover his existence, so he had to leave immediately. Rushing to a small hill in the distance, Qin Feiyang turned to look at the ancient city, his eyes flickering. Even the Fangtian halberd could not damage the mysterious sky ancient city, which meant that this ancient city was at least a supreme divine artifact. An ancient city with a supreme divine artifact? Wasn't this a little too unbelievable? Boom! Clang! The battle in the city became more and more intense. Qin Feiyang returned to the top of the mountain again and looked into the city. He was stunned again. Those blood demons were basically holding a divine artifact in their hands at this moment. Swords, spears, sticks, and everything. And judging from the aura, they were basically peak level and legendary divine artifacts. No way. They are all peak level and legendary divine artifacts. Everyone is waiting for an opportunity. But I never expected that senior brother would also come to the mysterious sky ancient city. The heavens are really helping us. With Wu Xixiang here, we will definitely be able to slaughter these blood demons. The young men and women said. That's a must. Wu Baichuan laughed. The group of people went crazy, and the blood demons fell one after another. People at Wu Baichuan's level wouldn't even bat an eye at pinnacle grade and legendary grade divine artifacts. Therefore, they were all taken advantage of by the people behind. For example, the war god and the divine lord were basically at the back, happily picking up divine artifacts. With their cultivation, they could only do this kind of thing because they couldn't help. A young woman looked back at those people and snorted coldly. These trash only know how to hide behind and take advantage of others. Wu Baichuan turned his head and looked. His eyes immediately surged with a cold light. He said with a voice transmission, "Don't worry about them. Anyway, they have to obediently hand it over to us later. If they don't hand it over, then don't blame me for being ruthless." That's true. The young woman nodded with a cold smile in her eyes. Looking at Qin Feiyang again. No matter how many people appeared, he didn't join in the fun. Because he believed that the blood demons definitely wouldn't allow Wu Baichuan and the others to continue killing as they pleased. In the city, there were definitely blood demons at the Great Perfection Ninth Heaven realm. Wu Xixiang, you're really invincible. Wu Xixiang, let us follow you. Seeing Wu Baichuan holding the sky halberd and killing in all directions like a god demon, many people were full of admiration. Wu Baichuan was so proud of himself that he felt like he was about to float. But there were also some people who greedily stared at the sky halberd in Wu Baichuan's hand. The reason why Wu Baichuan was so powerful was because of this supreme-level divine artifact. If they also had a supreme-level divine artifact, they could also kill the blood demons. Boom! Just as the group of people was full of confidence, the mysterious sky ancient city suddenly shook violently. Buzz! Immediately after, bright blood-red light soared into the sky from the city walls on all sides. In just an instant, a huge blood-red barrier appeared out of nowhere. Immediately, the entire mysterious sky ancient city was enveloped by the barrier. What's going on? The group of people raised their heads and looked at the barrier in bewilderment. At the same time, the blood demons who were still fighting with Wu Baichuan and the others turned around and flew out of the city. This Everyone was bewildered. Are they finally going to be serious? On the mountain peak, Qin Feiyang whispered. As soon as this barrier appeared, Wu Baichuan and the others were like turtles in a jar. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.